nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, so tonight's get together, I guess, it's not a meeting, it's an annual, semi-annual retreat. So part of the retreats is we don't take any public comment. This is a time where the board and the superintendent and others on staff will take some time to go over some strategic planning, things we're trying to accomplish here for the next 6 months. Dr. Pierce is got her PowerPoint up. Look at that, timing is spectacular. Okay, perfect. So we've got that up. So again, just a little different format here this evening.
Okay.
Okay.
I think we're ready to go.
Okay.
Okay, so you have the agenda. The agenda items, of course, are generated by board members, and as Mr. Connors shared, tonight's really less about presentation of information and a lot more dialogue between the board and discussion for future planning, though we do have some information to share to help with the board discussion. My clicker's gonna work from here. All right. Well,
is it not catching? No. It's kind of broken.
Let me see if this one works.
You need an assistant clicker. Listen, want to stand up here and go. Teresa, give you a. Joseph's coming to check it.
We've got IT on staff. Here he comes.
Give him 3 shots and then.
That's right. It's like
If you're at my house, I still unplug it.
it's like when professors are late, you get 15.
Plug the router.
When you call Spectrum, that's what they tell you.
Yeah.
It's inside your house. It's not our problem. No, already tried all these things. Yay.
Perfect.
Good job, Joseph.
Okay. So I think it's helpful to just go back to the last board retreat and just refresh what some of the discussion was, because that helps inform where we're headed. So in June, at the last semi-annual board retreat, part of that workshop was the board looking at the data from your own self-assessment, identifying which areas connected to the WASDA standards for board governance did you want to focus on for the year. And at that retreat in June, you had identified these areas for board focus, including increasing community interaction and dissemination of information, increasing stakeholder involvement in processes, ensuring that board members have additional time for research and discussion before decisions are made, effective systems for instructional quality and staff evaluation, and then, of course, high standards for budget and resource management. And then we went back to a set of priorities that you identified for district focus originally in January of 2022. And so at the June retreat, we looked at these areas that were identified in January 2022, and then the board updated this and identified kind of some new priorities, and those are listed here, and I won't read all of those to you, but you can see what those priority areas were, and then we incorporated those priority areas into this document. So kind of the big areas continue to be student safety and crisis management, and even the levy plan has additional student safety features in it, because that's continues to be a big priority for the board. Community involvement, and of course this year there's some new committees like the Instructional Materials Committee that includes additional community involvement. Funding, of course, continues to be a priority. Levies like the one we have coming up. Election Day is February 14th. Ballots are going to drop in just a couple of weeks. And then student learning and performance is always a high priority. So I just like to bring this up because you're going to see connections tonight to these priority areas and the discussion topics that you've identified for this retreat. So we're going to go in a little bit out of order with the items, and the first one we're going to start with is some a preliminary future planning discussion about facilities. And at different times, this has come up in the context of, getting updates on capital projects or questions about how we're using fields or possibilities for the future about different spaces that we have in the district and that kind of a thing. So just a reminder, when it comes to construction projects right now, right, we're in the process of completing the bond projects from the 2019 bond. So Amistad's done, Kamayakan, Southridge are complete, Kennewick's complete, and we're in the process of completing Ridgeview, and that's really the final bond project from 2019. So just a real quick, I thought it'd be fun to look at a couple most updated pictures from Ridgeview because that project's really coming along, and all of this information too is on the website, as you know, and there's construction videos and so forth, but that project's really coming along, but that is the last project. So now, even though it seems like a long way off, it's a good time to start talking about the next bond, even though it's not going to be on the ballot for a while. What we had talked about in planning for levies is probably a 2025 bond measure is what we would be potentially looking at. And so we have a lot of work that goes into planning for that. And we want to make sure that we hear from the board, all of your ideas and thoughts and brainstorms and, thoughts about use of space and all of that, so we can build that into our future planning. So Vic's going to help me out with this part, so I've got a chair up here, but I'll just go through a couple of things. One is, we do have a 10-year capital facilities plan, and it really outlines, the bond program moving forward, the current bond program and what we have moving forward that was originally planned. We do update this capital facilities plan annually because we update the enrollment projections because things change, right, from when it was originally done. But it's still our 10-year capital facility plan, but it gets updated when we acquire new property. That gets put into the plan. So there's a lot of updates, and we're in the process of updating it right now with just the most up-to-date data. So some of the data that's included in that plan are, like I said, enrollment, and updated enrollment projections, also property that the district owns. So I thought I would just include that property map. And just real quick, in case we want to reference it at any time during the conversation, a little bit more information about each of those properties that could be potential future school sites and where those are. I'll just quickly click through them. But we've got a number of potential future elementary sites, also potential future middle and high school sites that were acquired more recently, like the 81-acre site up at Riata. And then we have what's currently in the capital facilities plan in terms of what would potentially be the next projects, on the next bond. So
Can we go back just one? Sorry.
yeah.
Okay.
So this is what's currently there, and then we've presented some update information because we also update the ICOS rankings of the schools. Vic can talk a little bit more about how all of that works. There's been some change because, like, right now we don't have a need for new schools currently. We don't have the enrollment based on the K-3 class size and the additions that we've done at Some of the schools like making Ridgeview bigger, making Amistad bigger. So some things are changing from here, but I'll just quickly, and then it'll be board discussion. We have a lot of to-dos in the next year to even get ready for potentially putting a bond on the ballot in 2025. So we have to update the project list, really determine a lot of, what the bond amount would be, what we would want the projects to be. We involve a facility executive committee in that process, so there's community involvement, and then there's also processes for larger community involvement. The board has obviously a big voice in that process and finalizes the project list. So there's a lot of work to be done. And then when it comes to like the details for each of these items, you can see, I won't read all of this to you, but there's lots of detail work that has to be done as well. But so tonight's conversation is, like I said, over the course of past several months and year, at different times, board members have said, hey, have we thought about this? Or what are we thinking about that? Or could we do this? And I think this is the time for the board to have that sort of open discussion and brainstorm. So Vic and I can kind of get a sense of what all of your thoughts and ideas are as we go into really working through the to-do list for the plan moving forward.
Tracy, 2 slides back, and I've been a little slow tonight. I couldn't interpret what you're trying to show here.
Okay, and that's where Vic's going to help me out.
Okay.
And I wanted to see that one too.
This was a summary that was Ryan provided to the facility executive committee, just to kind of get them back familiar with the projects that were listed. And he had referenced the ICOS score, so that's generally, if you've done a new roof, your score would be higher. New schools might have 100%. And it's generally sort of used to rank the projects and get them in order. You can see that, Hawthorne, Washington, Old, so their scores are pretty low. And then Highlands is a little over 4.7. But you can't really, we don't schedule to remodel or renovate a school. They have to have 30 years before the state gets you eligibility for the financial assistance. So those are the next ones. They would be eligible in those years, 25, 28.
So Vic, refresh my memory on how much the state will give us for those renovations?
Well, for Ridgeview right now, the total cost is probably estimated about 33 million, and we're going to get about 9 million.
That's it?
That's it, because on Ridgeview, we're only getting paid for about 45 to 50,000 square feet, because they say you already have enough square footage based on our formula. So if you build at 60,000 square feet, that 15,000 or whatever, you have to pay for it yourself. So with the Hawthorne and Washington, those are 45,000 square feet. Normally we would have some discussion, facility executive committee, that'd come back here. Do we build that? Like Ridgeview, 60,000. We've been going up about 60,000. So that does impact, how much match or how much we have to use of our own money.
So and again, forgive my ignorance on this, but when we look at that, I mean, does the state look at gymnasiums, that kind of stuff? Is that all part of their formula?
Those certain things like gyms aren't included, I don't think. It's instructional space.
Instructional space.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Vic, again, pardon my ignorance, how does Southridge have a lower score than Highlands?
Yeah, that's a more Ryan question that has to do with various upgrades. It seems like it probably should have a higher score, but I can't get into the details without.
Yeah, none of the ICOS rankings have the current stuff that was in it. So I would imagine once that is calculated in, those scores would.
Yeah, they may not have that on there.
But yeah, I don't see any of those dates on there.
But I won't beat you to death. I know we have a lot to talk about tonight, but even with the previous, before the edition, Southridge was in a better state than Highlands. If you go through the schools, if you walk through the schools, it appeared. I don't know the air condition, all that kind of stuff.
It could be too sometimes. So, Highlands is old, but they have, when you do an HVAC system, which we spent, several $1 million on like 7 years ago, that kind of tweaks your score. We painted it. Okay. We've done little things like that. That could have impacted that a little bit. But.
Sorry, it seems like if we don't take care of it, they'll let us replace it quicker. Sorry, it's kind of silly math.
And one of the challenges, right, is because of how that all works, there's some schools that I'll just say personally, I feel like look like they need to be upgraded before other schools, but based on their ICO score, they're higher than the school that.
State match.
Right. But, rather than really getting into all of the details on this tonight, we're just sharing that we need to update all the information in the capital facility plan, have some preliminary conversation with the facility executive committee, bring all that to the board, and that'll be a lot of process. But in addition to just the schools that are on the capital, projects list and potentially the next set of schools for bond projects, the board has just brought up different things over the course of the months about facilities and fields and projects and ideas. And so we want to make sure that we're having the opportunity for the board to raise all of those ideas or thoughts so we can take those notes and include that in our kind of investigation and potential scoping and future conversations.
Thank you. Yeah, so you have a lot of time to kind of, not this meeting, but, things that you want to talk to Tracy about or get on a list. So normally the bond would have these larger projects that, are eligible for, money, and then other projects. We've done roofs, we've done HVAC, and we've done facilities, lighting, different things like that. So those get added on, and those can be fairly significant.
Think off the top of your head, because I know you know everything. Do you remember when the last rebuild or redo for KDC was?
It was added.
Wade and Discovery Center.
2009.
9?
I looked through the packet
Okay,
today.
because I was thinking about that yesterday and I forgot to look.
8 or
so
9.
I think that was just an addition of some
We added some
classrooms.
classrooms to it.
Yeah, that was addition of some classrooms.
But when they did that, they only added classrooms. They didn't
I don't think they did a whole
anything else.
much of a renovation.
Because does that not have a number because it's funded differently? Or
I think
how does that work?
that could be considered modular.
I know it is.
Yeah, so I'm not sure that is eligible for funding or anything like that, but,
Okay.
for projects and things, if that's, we are doing some work here this spring to that with the playground area.
Yeah. And I think we've redone the playground before, but I know inside some of the classrooms, especially, like you can only add so much electronic stuff
Okay,
and then it doesn't work anymore.
yeah, that'd be,
So there are a lot of things that maybe we could look at for that, because that's really full to the brim.
yeah, that'd be good to get on the list. And like I said, sometimes depending on what it is, if it's a manageable price, we might try to do it outside of a bond. If it's larger, then I go ahead and put it in. So, yeah.
So when we're looking at a bond, we're looking, so I ran the numbers, so that's roughly $270 million, give or take. So when we're running the bond, are we figuring 60% of the total of the value of the building, knowing that we're going to get some funding from the state?
Yeah, you caught me off guard because I didn't include the new schools on my numbers.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
So-
just.
Yeah, so we would figure, so much match, maybe 30%.
30% match, okay. Yeah,
We
no,
looked
I
at
just was
those
trying to.
numbers. Those numbers need to be increased. Like I said, Ridgeview is going to cost probably 32 or 33 million. So those costs need to be adjusted.
Okay.
Middle school costs need to be adjusted upward, and that'll be looked at over the next year.
Okay.
And then we provide some of that information to the people that run the numbers on the bond, how much, is a tax increase based on projects and some of the numbers you're talking about.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Also this year, depending on what happens in the legislature, the SCAP funding, there could be different streams, more solid streams of funding for that too. So, we need to know kind of what's going on there first.
Yeah, I didn't see a lot of change in this gap from the legislature when I looked over things, other than the inflation adjustment to the square foot. They'd use a reimbursement, maybe it's $270, maybe around there per square foot, and schools are costing us upwards of $450 a square foot.
And there's some issue, and I don't remember the bill number, but taking the land trust funds and taking that out of SCAP and putting that for our low income or small rural districts that cannot pass bonds, basically, but then not leaving that hole there and finding what's the word I'm using, consistent stream of funding to replace that with. So who knows what will happen, but that could make a little difference too.
Yeah, maybe so.
And Vic alluded to it, but I just want to be clear, this is sort of old data, right? That's in the current capital facilities plan that needs to be updated. And if you recall, there was an elementary 18 on the 2019 bond, and we don't need an elementary 18 right now. I mean, we have property for future schools, which we definitely will need in the future, I'm sure. But right now we don't have the enrollment increase to need an elementary 18. So there's an elementary 19 that was part of the plan developed, at the time, in a middle school 6 and new elementary 20, but those wouldn't be needed on this next bond, at least at this point, based on our enrollment's pretty steady.
So we talked about the capital fund, we talked about that $25 million or so that is still related to those projects we talked about, and we would, apply that, repurpose it as best we could for some of this future stuff. And then we normally would have architect plans ready to go for whatever that first project is. And we use money that we already have, the capital fund, to kind of get that they call shovel ready. So if you pass a bond and it passes, you're ready to go. And that can be $1 million or so that you need from that architect work to get all done prior to construction.
So do you all have just thoughts, or I know you've shared things, and I just want to make sure you're having the opportunity to kind of surface those things at this meeting about ideas, not necessarily about the schools that would be built or maybe, but also you've brought up other things. So like you mentioned KDC, people brought up fields. What are we going to use things for?
Yeah,
That's what I'm trying to.
Is that what is that this
Yes.
time right now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, because
We just want to get
Okay.
preliminary thoughts
Yeah,
that
we
might
wanna-
be in your head.
we want to just jump right in. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right. I want to kind of propose or throw out to the board. We have spent a lot of money recently on our high schools, Mike and Kennewick, Southridge, but we do have a nice sized campus on 10th, Legacy High School and Endeavor High School. I would love maybe some conversation around building out that campus like we do the other high schools. So the kids that attend there have the same resources to go out and walk the track or play on the fields or something similar like that as well. With the idea too that potentially that's a choice campus, and we look at moving Phoenix from its current location onto that campus, Legacy. I think it accomplishes a couple things. One, I think we talk about safety and campus safety. I know in my visits to those schools, and I know talking with some of the leadership and the admin at those schools, there's been, at least what I was told, probably once a week, they've got to have the police come and remove, someone's homeless sleeping on the bench in the morning, or they're kind of worried about that there by Phoenix. So some campus safety there. I also think it pools together resources. So maybe, some of those resources are together and some of those staff can help, the Legacy School or Endeavor. And then I also think it leads to better oversight and management. So right now the principal manages both, has to drive to both. Having the campus, I think, all together, I think just leads to more cohesive use of time and resources and management oversight. And then I think we have a nice, beautiful choice campus there on 10th that, our kids can go to. And there's obviously lots of things that you can discuss about the size of the campus. I'm throwing it out there kind of big picture down the road.
And I echo everything Gabe says, except that I would take that further. I would love to see us utilize those fields. There we have, I don't know how many acres it is, but I know it's a ton. There's empty field space. We could put 2 or 3 sports fields there. I mean, it could be a community partnership with, you know, public, you know, there we could rent those out. I mean, I know the fields now are like full-time rented out constantly, multiple teams on a field all day, you know. And so that just gives us more field space. I do agree with the choice campus. Now all of a sudden people might choose to go to Legacy. I've also been to all those high schools, some of them a couple times. And they share the same thought, like in order for us to really be able to manage these 3 high schools, they really need to be together. So and then where I would even take it further is I don't know why we need 3 high schools. I mean, if they're all 3 in the same place, for me, it seems like you have 3 graduations, 3 logos, so everything's printed off 3 different times. It's like why not consolidate that all in one high school? And then now you have the opportunity to like kind of switch curriculums around, right? So like every high school sort of has their own type of curriculum. Well, what if one student has certain needs and we just have this one high school that can kind of tackle all those needs within one high school by sort of maybe jumping to math online, but then reading in person or something like that, right? And that gives you an ability to really modify and really adapt the curriculum, or maybe someone really needs a hands-on thing, but for, you know, they really need hands-on for most of their subject, but for this one subject, they can just blow through it online, right? So to me, I think you consolidate money, you actually raise money make money by renting the fields. And so I would just take that, everything Gabe said, I would echo that, and then I would take it to the new level, just combining all that and building fields, sports fields for the community.
Thanks. And that has been on the list, that area behind Legacy about sports fields. It's alone with some of that.
Mm-hmm.
And Micah, when you say the 3 schools, are you talking about
Legacy, Endeavor, Phoenix.
Okay.
Yeah, I know.
Like which schools?
There's an argument that could be made that you keep Endeavor separate potentially, but take Phoenix and Legacy together and make that. I just don't understand why those 2 high schools. Why can't you make them both in one? And one's got 50 kids and one's got 50, 170 kids. I'm not really sure on the numbers, but I think they're close to that. And so now you got one high school that might have 250 kids or something, and it's really helps and it's really services those kids in every regard. You know, you can modify curriculum and they have sports fields and track, and you know, and then it's also a revenue opportunity for the school district.
Is it a discussion, or are you just gathering thoughts?
It's board discussion, it's gathering thoughts, it's, you know, I mean, there's no decision or anything, it just helps us know kind of what we might want to look into. But there should definitely be board dialogue about the ideas that are being
I want to give you a little history on why the schools are. I want to give you a little history on why the schools are like they are. Many of the students that attend those schools do not want to be at a large institution. Excuse me. And that's why some of the reasons they are no longer at the Kennewick High, Southridge High, and Kennewick. And they like that small campus. They like that interaction. And when you combine it, you're taking that away from some of the students. I'm not saying all, but some of the students will now be a part of a larger campus. And that's the reason that some of them, I stress that. That's some of the reasons why they left mainstream education. So if you combine it, we run the risk of losing those that feel more comfortable in a small campus situation.
It's still pretty small. I mean, it's not very big.
Relative to what you're used to. To them, we've been able to keep Phoenix a small population. And you go in there, and I've been to Phoenix and Legacy, those students are pretty happy with their situation. And even some of the administration are happy that I talk to, and I still talk to. They're happy where they are. And they like the fact that open, especially Phoenix.
Phoenix is wide open, right? Yeah.
And they all interact with each other, and they help each other, and it's a community of people. Mm-hmm. And you go into Legacy, and there's walls, there are classrooms, it's more structured.
But there also is that open space in Legacy where Endeavor is currently, so you could potentially, expand that slightly, and there's your same thing. And if you talk to the staff, the principal, vice principal, it's really hard for them to do anything with Phoenix, because it's a drive, and there's just, it's like not on the, it's hard to manage something that you're not in.
I think,
Just sharing with you.
I think that's a valid point. I mean, I think you can still potentially look at keeping kind of the structure and the openness of Phoenix on that same campus. And I'd also add too, I think, even the safety issue, right? So when we talk about when the levy passes and we do the SRO and limited commission officer thing, that officer is going to be Legacy in Phoenix. So that officer is going to be splitting time, or that limited commission was going to be splitting time back and forth rather than potentially on just the one campus and able to, be accessible right there. So just another thing.
Is there a
But
way you can
it's-
kind of do what you say and combine them, but kind of keep that feeling that Ron's articulating?
Well, so given what you told us here, we would, kind of do some preliminary schematic and things and see what would work, You're not talking about just, adding a space onto it, or, there could be something more to that, and it'd be kind of vetted, and people at, Phoenix and Legacy would probably provide input, and there's a lot to it.
And, just like increasing community involvement, and I mean, this would be, if it's just like an idea that's being shared, we could kind of look into it, what, data, we could get input, we could, investigate it to see if it's a feasible idea, and, especially the field part of it, right? The field part, and we'll look at the feasibility of all of it. We just want to make sure we're getting ahead of any ideas that you have that you want us to look into prior to really getting serious about planning for the bond, so we know what your priorities are and what you want us to look at.
And I also just don't want, I don't want to leave this out, that, as a business owner and a guy who looks at like money all the time, for me, the economic side of it is also a driver, right? You're talking about, I think you're saving a lot of money by doing that, and then even raising money by renting fields. So I think the economic side, we are stewards of the community's money, right? We're asking people to pay taxes, and so I think that's part of our job, is to be stewards of the money that the hard-earned money that they're making and giving to us. I think that's part of our job, right? Is to look at that, the fiscal responsibility.
Okay, but just on the round, I'm not against it. So you don't have to persuade me. I think it's a good idea. I just don't want to lose what we've gained by having those schools in place.
Yeah, maybe
And
there's a
the
way to do
student
that.
body that we turned out
Yeah.
from those schools, I don't want to lose that opportunity for those kids.
I hear you, Ron.
So I'm all for it. I don't think we have to beat it to death. I think we're on board.
As long as I think that we're all about fiscal responsibility, trying to utilize the assets we have currently without losing the quality of school and the high touch, I guess, that some of these schools are providing for these kids. So I think that's really the key. As long as we can do that, I'm with you.
I have a new idea if we're ready to move on.
What you got?
Hey, that's Ron.
Okay. My idea is an old one, and I don't know how far to take it. Yeah, this is an old one. I really think we should look into our bathroom situation, shower situation, and look at individual facilities where you go into a separate, you can go into an area, but it separates into separate stalls with doors. And I actually experienced this. We went to the Met in New York City. Everybody went to the same bathroom, but you went to your private stall and you close the door, you do whatever you have to do, you come out to a common area and wash your hands, and you're out. And privacy is completely withheld. There's no one in that stall minding your business. I just think future buildings should look at that type of situation for restrooms. And if not that, at least offer that option, like 4 or 5 of rooms that you can do that in, and rest of them open. But I think we're at the point that we need to seriously consider that for our future buildings.
Thank you for bringing that up.
And that's how Europe's had it
Yeah.
forever and ever. It's, and it's not just a stall, it's your whole space.
Your little area.
Right. Right.
Yeah. I mean, I agree, and if you're in the spirit of getting ahead of things, I think that this whole bathroom thing is coming down the pike pretty soon, and and we're looking at money and possible renovations and stuff. I think that's really a smart idea, is to look at how we can even renovate the existing, specifically high schools, so that we can kind of avoid these situations. And if you have someone who identifies a different way, that they can have a bathroom that works for them, and other people who are more traditional, who don't feel comfortable with someone of a different biological sex going into that same bathroom, they can feel comfortable as well. So I think looking at renovating our current high schools, as well as, I think that's a really smart idea, even middle schools potentially.
And I think that's an additional benefit, is that everybody goes to the same bathroom.
Yeah.
When you go to your separate stalls.
Yep.
And identity is not attached to you because you went to that stall.
Right. Yeah. It solves a big problem, Ron, what you're saying, yeah.
Diane, I have to imagine you have some ideas here for today.
Not right now, no.
I'm
I mean, I
gonna
have a
write
lot
that down
of, I
somewhere.
have a lot of ideas, but not right now.
Yes, sir.
Can I just ask about, I'm new here, right? I've only been here a year. So Fruitland, is there like, well, I mean, just can someone quickly
What's
update a
going on
plan on
with
Fruitland? Like, I can tell you that's a long walk when you're walking from one end of Fruitland to the other, but it's been around for a long time, and I thought I've heard, I know, but I thought I've heard we've kind of, every time we move someone in there, we're kind of patching different things. Just
So,
what's
yeah,
the,
we've,
what's
the score on
Fruitland? Yeah.
What's whatever that score is.
Yeah, so Fruitland actually is, people, buildings that go there, it's probably just almost a step above the ones we're tearing down, to be honest.
Yeah.
So there's no state money to renovate it, it's off our district rolls. If she puts that project list back on there, let's go to that. And we do try to, every time we put some in there, we do spend some money on it. And not huge amounts, but, I think people have walked through it after Kennewick kind of said, wow, you guys did a few more things to it. Could we replace the gym floor and things? But we need the swing space if some of those schools. So one of the things we look at when we're going to do one of these projects is, like Hawthorne and Washington, do you keep the school there and build on that site? Those sites are pretty large. So then you wouldn't need Fruitland. But if you get down to like a Highlands, there's no space. You're going to have to move those kids because it's such a tight site. And then you have to use Fruitland.
So
we've
is that
done a
what
roof on
Fruitland
it.
is? It's just
Yes.
like that space to just move people in and out of?
That's
while
our
you're-
spare.
Yeah.
We're actually really, I was like, wow, when I got to Kennewick and said, we have a swing space? Because in most school districts, you don't have that in your inventory, and the only option you have is to, when you're rebuilding a school, you have to essentially build on where the fields are, and then tear down the existing school, move, and then put the fields where. So you can't just rebuild the exact same, footprint. So I was like stunned when we're really fortunate to have that and that flexibility.
So yeah, that's pretty much, try to update it here and there. It's still a building that has the most cost-efficient heating system in the district, pretty much.
Just open the door.
Yeah.
Turn the boiler on and you
And
don't turn
open
it
all
off.
the windows.
You don't turn it off until, April or something.
Yeah.
It's also not, it's something that we can lose. So we don't want to, I'm on the mic here, so it doesn't matter. It's something we don't want to make too much of us think about because it's not on our list of schools. And I think when we report it to the authorities, we don't say it's an active school. Is that correct?
It's been taken off
Yeah.
officially. the
that's
rules,
cool.
yes.
So we wouldn't be allowed, right? I mean, we couldn't.
You can't.
No, we're not doing
count-
anything illegal.
Yeah, you couldn't put it back on the
You cannot
inventory.
house
It's been,
students in
yeah.
there
We can't have
permanently.
kids there, then they'll put it back on the
Right.
rolls and count against our space.
But can you, like, could you tear it down and rebuild it back on the same spot?
Nope, because.
Well-
I know there's no state money, but I'm just saying, like,
To-
is that something you could do? I mean, if, I don't know,
I
just,
mean, a lot of people would say, why don't you tear down the school my kids are going to and build me a new one? I mean,
Yeah.
it's just swing space, so it's, you know, or if you'd rather put that money in the legacy or something else probably, then.
That would make it a
Schools
permanent
cost,
school.
You know, $40 million for something like that.
Well, and we've got
Tough sell.
Amistad right across the street, and then we just completely rebuilt Kennewick
Yeah.
High, so.
Yeah, that's right. Most of the time, we just put a little money into it, like roof, paint, and some window stuff. Rather than
Okay.
using taxpayer money to do a huge tear down.
I think it looks pretty good as a turnaround.
It looks way better than it did when I was housed there 20 odd years ago.
yeah, and I mean, I know we keep adding here and there and this and that, but at some point when it's 96 in the classroom in the summer, you know,
It's,
I'm just,
character.
yeah, sure, them poor,
Thank you, Ron.
them saunas, yeah.
usually a couple weeks in the spring and a couple weeks in the fall. When that
Yes.
happens, yeah.
That happens in some of our new buildings too, where the systems don't work, so.
It's not perfect, but
Yeah.
believe me, we want to hold on to it.
Yeah.
You read the capital project, that sucker says 1954 in there with nothing else next to it, so that's all I asked, so. Cool.
Okay, I have another one, sorry.
Yes, sir.
We recently purchased that building at the hospital, that hospital building. Can we draw some plans for that? I'm stuck on making it Kennewick High band room, or band building, but what's the plans on utilizing that building?
It's just been used for our grounds department as a
Okay.
east side site.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
Could you help, what is that? What is it? Where is it at?
The old KGH downtown.
You know,
Well,
where
it's
it
just it's an old storage building
is, right there behind the
on
swimming pool.
the corner 8th across from the baseball field, Kennewick High baseball field.
The K fields,
Yeah,
We recently acquired it.
but if.
by the DeBee
Yeah, I
building,
mean, I
what used to be
don't
the
know.
DeBee building.
The band, if they need storage, there could be some other alternatives.
That was just pull it out of the air
Oh, yeah,
usage
so-
of it, but
There was never really huge plans for that, other than get the space in the future if you needed a field or something like that. And then as a site for the east side for grounds to stage some equipment and storage, that's all.
okay.
We get 2 acres there, is that what we bought, or just one?
About 2 acres.
About 2 acres, okay.
We'd like to fence it off, so that's something we're trying to get done, but it's been a little hard getting the fence contractors.
So you're actively looking for fencing.
It's just where, it's just the work, they're just so busy,
Okay.
yeah. There has been some problems down in that area.
I lied when I said
Get
that
it
was my
wrong.
last one. On the north side of Southridge High School, you know where the faculty pulls in the park, there's a field there, and it looks like there's some activity. And maybe we've covered this before, and I just went absent-minded on this. What is the plan for that plot of land? It's between the what's the senior living home?
Hawthorne Court, or
Yeah.
not Hawthorne,
Yeah.
Copper or something.
No, Copper Ridge is the apartments, but the one over to the north.
North, is it?
Like, is it the triangle, is it a triangle?
It's a little
Yes,
triangle,
triangle
yeah.
shape, yes.
Southridge and Ridgeline.
Yeah,
and
yeah, there's not
Dirt lot.
been any firm plans. It's been
Across from the student parking lot.
held as a piece that maybe in the future, the Southwood do parking or anything there, but there's no firm plans on it other than to keep the dust down.
So, speaking of that, can we either put some visual pleasing vegetation? Maybe, there's a region there not too far from that that's doing dry land.
Xeriscape.
Yes, and can we use that area as a sort of a little campus, making for even our agricultural classes to grow those kind of vegetations there that would be pleasing instead of empty lot?
I think any alternative is open to review.
You know what they have?
I'd need a little more on vegetation, and that's probably not
Well, you know what
my
they have
wheelhouse.
underneath where where we built the overhanging new building at Southridge, underneath it's xeriscaped. So it's rocks and non-water needing plants and stuff. And I think, you know, there is a new ag program up there. I think that's a great idea
Yeah.
to find out if that's maybe, because that's industry wise, that's where our landscaping kids really need to be, is learning more
Yeah.
about that.
And I
So
think
I'll,
community
Talk to
friendly.
Ryan about that, and maybe you can touch base with it. And like I said, that could be something that's not in a bond, we just try to knock out. you know.
So we talked about, what were we talking about, putting greenhouses at, was it Southridge? or-
There is a greenhouse
There
there.
is.
There is one now? Okay.
So Mike, I'm going to take it back because Ron just tweaked my thought. Dr. Pierce and I had talked about this a couple months ago. There is illegal activity that goes on in the student parking lot at Southridge. I know you guys know about that because you get police reports all the time. And I don't know what the answer is, and I was up there one day and Ron Williamson and I were batting some things around. So yes, you want community access. You know, we want them to be able to use that. However, it's not, the times when the illegal activity is taking place up there is not when the majority of our community that lives there is going to be using the field or the track or something like that. So is there some way, I hate fencing off, barricading, stuff like that, but is there some way to make it less interesting to be there?
We'll put that on the list to think through it. I think you're talking about you're talking about the south side, right?
It's
That parking lot,
the,
that long one there?
it's actually the
Yeah.
west kind of behind there.
Yeah. So we can,
Because-
you know.
Because I
put
know you
that-
have to be able to get in there during the day, and I know community people like to come and walk and, you know,
It's
wonderful.
also dirty,
Well, yeah, but
a lot of garbage.
yeah,
Yeah,
the
it
nighttime illegal activity is the big concern
Yeah.
of the police department and of the community members who live around there. It's a little scary at times for
Yeah.
people.
So we'll look at that.
There's like there's swing gates there too, they just aren't ever
Yeah,
shut and
when they're
locked,
shut,
but I
you
mean,
know, it's just a matter, you gotta have someone come.
Yeah.
by.
Yeah.
But, you know, we look at, you know, we do parking lot work and things. Sometimes those are included in a bond if you have enough of them. We've been recently doing some of those outside of the capital fund. That parking lot actually is one that is on the list.
Good, because,
to do some with, but-
You know, it's not great for the people who live there, first of all, to have that activity. It's not great for Southridge to have it, because then there's vandalism of the school also. And as you said, there's junk all over, you know, so I know there's, you know, one of our students was injured quite badly, not many months ago, because of that being a place to gather and maybe not drive very safely. So, you know, I'm just thinking about safety issues and liability
Yeah.
from the district's point of view too.
And speaking of safety, I mean, security and safety items are things that normally we look at and would bring back to the board facility committee if we needed upgrades, and it might be big enough to where it gets in a bond, building security type stuff.
Thanks. Will you kind of keep us
This one here.
in the know of that one?
Yeah, let's see if we get any ideas on
Okay.
what we could do to help with that.
Thanks.
We're laughing because now you're really going.
I know.
I know.
I got it.
Well, really quick on that.
Yeah,
thought,
we haven't even given you any. bonds.
It is also like really, I mean, like sometimes there's so much garbage, it's unbelievable. And I drive by there almost every day and I just can't believe how much garbage is there. And there also is that big field between the track and the high school. That might be another option to put like a field in there, another soccer field or a a football kind of field there. And now, because you always have like the high school, you know, is trying to practice them in there, it's really tricky.
I think there is kind of a field there, but I get what you're
There
saying.
is,
Yeah.
but like a nice turf field that you can actually rent out to
Yeah.
the community.
The
and-
community is begging for pickleball courts.
Yeah.
Just to throw that out there.
The city's building them like
Speaking of Southridge,
crazy.
you know, we did do the lighting at Lamson, and
Yeah.
that one will probably be on the
coming
list.
at Southridge.
So the lighting for
There's a lot of
Southridge will
light
be,
pollution, and those lights were all on that campus, so those are things we look at also to cost? Do we include stuff like that?
I was approached by Highlands Middle School for shade structures for the kids during the late spring months. It gets really hot, and I experienced it myself up there.
We talked about that several
Right,
months ago.
Right,
Yeah.
a while ago, but we didn't get any that was satisfactory to the staff there. So if we could look into shade structures, I'm thinking like we have at Kennewick High School in that open area of Kennewick High School where we have the triangles. I think it's
The sales.
the sales, that's what it's called, yeah. If we could also look at that for the middle schools and especially Highlands,
So for all middle school students.
of course.
Yeah.
Anything I bring up is
Yeah.
for all of them, even though I may say.
This is something we've been working on, I know that, and I'm just curious for an update, because we've been working with the city on the crosswalks at schools, and I know we were putting some in at a few schools. Have we identified any more, or has all that work been done that we, as far as we know?
So I think there's 2 or 3 gonna get done. And
Okay.
normally the city, they usually are the ones who come to us and initiate that through
Sure,
the grants and
yeah.
stuff. But I know there's a couple that look like are gonna.
There was like 4, I think, a while
Yeah,
back we were
maybe it could
talking
be
about
4.
where you
But
you
we'll
push the
continue to
thing.
look at
Okay.
those.
Okay.
Yeah, if there's any others on the list, we'll let you know.
So when those are funded, do you guys use the Safe Streets funding for that? Are you put in for that?
The city gets all the funding.
Okay,
We usually provide like a match.
okay.
Or, if it's $100,000 project, can you give 10 or 30%? And we do it that way.
Because I know
We don't have any access.
we fought forever to get that one at Southridge, and it just got stonewalled forever and ever. And finally,
Yeah.
I don't know why, after multiple kids got hit, we finally got one. But we shouldn't have to have children or people get hit before we get a crosswalk.
So we've been fortunate working with the city on that.
Good.
Continue to do that.
Yes, they did.
And most of those, we try to do out of our maintenance.
When you mentioned the lighting, so this isn't a new thing, but when you are doing the back part of Ridgeview, the new Ridgeview, are you really shielding that lighting that would be on the south side where all those houses are?
I'll have to ask on that, the elementaries don't have the sports lighting, but I
Right.
can check on the lighting around the building.
Because
Most of
now I know, somebody I know was like 2 or 3 houses over. Now that it's a 2-story building,
them-
the lights will be different than when it was a 1-story building. And I do recall that they asked about that. And I know that those lights usually run down the side of the building, but, if I lived there, I might think differently of it.
Yeah, I know the newer ones now pretty much
Right.
shine down, but I'll double check with Ryan to make sure they're not shining out to the neighborhood.
What I'm saying was,
Yes,
we just jumped right to see.
yes, we're going on.
Okay, that's what.
Yes.
So Vic, you said, do you have
Well,
ideas?
there's always a project listed that we would, bring here, or, goes through the executive committee and the bond, if there's 5 or 10 million, and it hits some of these possibly and some other things. We're pretty up to date on HVAC, but I'm having the guys, roofs is a big one. Those will cost a lot of money. But I know the schools that are on the list that need roofs are Highlands and Parks, so we would not spend money on a roof if we're going to tear those down and do that. Playground, equipment, toys, structures, there's some need for that. Those are expensive. Some schools have newer ones than others that have been rebuilt. Others have old, and the fall area is not that safe, so those will get looked at.
Are you doing IDEA for all of those playgrounds? We
They would
talked
be-
about that before.
That would be another, right now, when we put one in, we want, pavement and access and different things to
Right.
those.
Because some of them, when that originally happened, they were IDEA play pieces, but you couldn't get
Yeah,
there.
it's kind of changed a lot,
So-
so those would be looked at, and just, any big paving projects, lighting projects, all sorts of different things that might get on the list and reviewed by the board of facility committee. We're pretty good on traffic, right?
Yeah.
tracks and
Tracks all
Dave
look
Bond
good.
is proud of you for those tracks.
so, things like that. So, looking at
And people are using them also.
Oh, they are all the time.
Cool. Do we have anything else on the facility planning ideas you want to talk about?
This was, us wanting to get from you, what your ideas and thoughts and priorities and so forth, so we can look into things and start the planning, so. Okay,
Perfect. You guys have anything else?
thanks.
Wonderful, thank you.
Okay, so, like I said, we're kind of going out of order here. The next item, we wanted to talk about was the curriculum cycle. So Alyssa's going to join me here, but I'll go ahead and get us started. So some of you will remember that the last time we brought a revision to how we approach our curriculum adoption cycle, was in September of 2019. And prior to 2019, we had been adopting curriculum on an 8-year cycle. And in the fall of 2019, the board approved a recommendation to move to a 10-year cycle, and it was a cost savings move. We also divided up how we do some curriculum. Prior to the change, we were doing like K-12 literacy. Well, it really makes more sense to do elementary K-5 literacy and then secondary literacy and do those separately because they're very different. So those were the big changes that the board approved previously. And so the 10-year cycle that was approved last time looks like this. And I know it's some of you might not have seen this in a while. So just to orient you to what you're looking at, all of our big curricular areas are listed down the left. And then the years are listed across the top. And I'm going to take health and fitness, right, because that's one that's current. How the adoption cycle works is there's a year of review and pre-planning where committees and curriculum specialists are looking at the standards, updates, doing research, and then a committee comes together in the second year to gain an understanding of the standards, to evaluate potential materials, and then to recommend adoption of those materials to the board. And then there's an implementation year where we're focusing on training and orientation to the new materials and so forth. So that's how the cycle works. And as you know, we budget about $1 million a year for curriculum adoptions, because some big areas like K-5 literacy can be, over $2 million to adopt all the materials needed. Some areas are less, but we budget about $1 million a year. And as you know, this year we're not doing a big curriculum adoption because we're not going to collect levy dollars next year in 2023 since the levy didn't pass. So one of the cost saving measures that the board approved when we adopted the budget for this year was to push out the curriculum cycle for a year and just delay some things. So that's also just given us an opportunity. We've had some changes. I'm sorry, jumping ahead of my slides, but this gives you a sense of some of those costs of adoptions and what the financial impact is, and so why we budget that about $1 million a year. So in addition, so where we are now is we also, there are some areas that were not present on the current curriculum adoption cycle. So dual language, for example, and we are doing work with dual language. You'll recall all of the discussion about, now why is it escaping me? The BOOFs, thank you. The BOOFs and the bilingual unit frameworks and the materials and all of that. So there's a committee working right now for dual, and so, but that area was not on the curriculum adoption cycle. We also have new online learning programs, right? We've got Endeavor, we've got the online learning program through MCP, and so we have adopted programs and materials for those programs in schools, but it wasn't part of our cycle. And so we also want to look at splitting science into elementary and secondary, like we have math and ELA. So that gets to what we are proposing for some additions to the curriculum adoption cycle. And I know I've been talking a lot, so I want to give you the opportunity, Alyssa, to chime in here and maybe explain.
More complicated chart. So we tried to color code the new curricula on the left, just to kind of where they're added in, and then to just kind of guide the eye of where we're at this year. So health is working on implementing their new curriculum, as is world language. Our K-5 dual language teachers are evaluating materials right now to look to be adopting. Our 6-8 dual is that kind of that free process to try to get into it next year. And then it also shows where we paused some work. And depending on levy, we would kind of get that going again next year. So those are kind of prepped and ready to go. You can also see on the curriculum focus area, the online learning's been added in and we split out. So there's K-5 science and 6-12 science towards the bottom.
So every 16 years, you get back to, reevaluate. I mean, that's our 16 items in the left column, right? So like essentially every 16 years, you're going to touch on, you know, you're going to do what are we doing this year? We're doing language. So you're not touching dual language for 16 years?
Well, if you look down towards the bottom, you can see social studies, that third one. Was implemented in 2021, and it's going to come back in 2930. So we've tried to keep it on a 10-year, but we're just going to have to do more than when we have smaller ones. We're going to have to double up and do a couple in a year. So we didn't add a year by adding these areas.
Okay, yeah, because even 10 years seems like a long time.
It does feel like a lot.
That's what I was going to ask, is
Yeah.
is the curriculum in 10 years still relevant? Like, it's got to be updated and things happen. Like, I can only imagine like a history curriculum, like in 10 years, there's probably a lot of stuff that in that, so.
So a couple things. I will say it's not completely unusual for a district to have a 10-year cycle because of the costs. And it does, you know, implementation, there's always sort of an implementation dip when teachers are learning new materials. It's just natural and, you know, it takes a little bit to get into the groove. Also, we have to remember that the instructional materials are not the curriculum. So I know, and we tend to use those terms interchangeably, but the curriculum is really like the instructional program for third graders. What is it we want our students to know and be able to do by the end of third grade? And then we adopt core curriculum materials to help teachers teach to those standards and skills and abilities and things like that. And they also have supplemental materials and, you know, other sort of like teacher worksheets and things like that. The other thing I will say is that now with open educational resources, and that was part of the conversation when we went from the 8-year cycle to the 10-year cycle, there are many online instructional materials that are openly available, you know, to teachers, and they're vetted and those kinds of things. So things have changed from maybe kind of the old way of thinking about, I'm going to teach out of this book, you know, page 1, page 2, page 3 out of the book, and that it's going to be outdated pretty soon. But it's also a financial decision, and that was a big driver for moving from the 8-year cycle to the 10-year cycle a couple of years ago.
Some districts have gone away from having a book curriculum, you know, the book sources at all. And I know a couple of years ago, before I was on board, I had asked with Chuck Liebeck about that. And there are pros and cons, I know, to that. Cost is a pro. You know, there are some cons about the other part, but have we moved to that in any of our departments? Are we looking at that?
Yeah, I would say not systemically, but our teachers who are using the standards and doing some backwards planning are moving to that in pockets. We have training with GLAD. Our science units are much more based that way. And So it's in pockets. What happens with that is a lot of teacher support and training, which is great.
Absolutely,
And
yeah.
we need it, but you have to have balance. So our teachers have the resources that they need so they can instruct. And we haven't gotten to a sweet spot.
I know that a problem has been, just in purchasing books, the financial part of it. And so we've gone from having a book for every student in a lot of places to a classroom set of books.
Right.
And that's fine, but sometimes everybody in the classroom needs a book, and then I have second period, and what happens? Then the books are out. So those are some of the pros for that. But I know even though you might not have the books, you can still go online, right?
Right.
But
Yeah, that's the other thing I was going to say with, Chromebooks and the big major publishers now putting their materials online. That's also helped with access, because that's always looked at when we're adopting, like a textbook, is the online access to the materials too. So, part of the conversation, again, one of the board priorities is you want to be able to, have time to think about things before we just bring them to you for asking you for an approval of a recommendation. So before we would just put this on a board meeting agenda to say essentially what we're asking is to approve updating the current curriculum cycle to include areas that were not previously on the curriculum adoption cycle, but maintaining the 10-year. The other thing that we wanted to bring to talk about a little bit tonight and just get your thoughts on is we still have some ESSER dollars that are focused on learning recovery and can only be used for learning recovery. We're using those dollars to provide the tutoring for all families that's available free to everybody in the district, and we keep promoting that for our families and our kids. We could also, it's one-time money, it's not ongoing revenue, so hiring additional staff to do things is not really an option because it's one-time money. But we could look at, using some of that money to move up curriculum adoption. And we've talked a little bit about mathematics and, our need to continue to focus on not only reading. We definitely want to focus on reading and continue that strong focus. And we also need to focus on math and other areas too. So what we could think about is moving up the K-5 math adoption. So we would have stronger materials to help teachers teach math, and we could use those ESSER dollars to fund that, so it doesn't really impact our overall curriculum budget. If we were to do that, we could look at doing some preliminary work during second semester of this year and over the summer, and do the evaluation and recommendation of adoption of materials next year, and then implement that new curriculum in 24-25. If we were to do that, there's a couple things. OSPI, the state, so we do adopt materials that help us focus on the state standards, and they're going to make some instructional material recommendations at the state level by the end of this year. And so we would have that information. We would want to use some of the ESSER dollars, it wouldn't be very much, but to hire, we're also down on curriculum people right now. So remember, we didn't fill a couple of curriculum positions this year because the levy didn't pass. So we don't have a whole lot of capacity, but we were thinking, well, we're not going to do an adoption. We won't fill these positions, at least for this year, to help that savings. But we could use some of the ESSER dollars to hire a math teacher on special assignment to just specifically focus on this work to help with the curriculum department, and it would just be a short-term, position. It wouldn't be an ongoing position, but we could use that funding to help kind of jumpstart the timeline of the math adoption. So I wanted to get your thoughts about that as a potential too.
Like that?
So the ESSER, I was listening to Reichdahl's annual press conference on K-12 education the other day, and I think I wrote this correctly. September 24th of 2024 is the end of ESSER dollars. Is that accurate? But it doesn't have to be spent by then, but it has to be encumbered by then. I was a little confused. By September
Yeah,
2024.
it's not quite as
Okay.
black and white as it sounds, but there are some.
Okay. Thank you.
It is one of the reasons to move this.
Right.
To capture those funds.
If you order curriculum, say in that summer and pay for it, that's okay.
Because you've ordered. Okay.
You're ready.
Okay.
By moving this up to this year, which I'm all for, do we create a log jam or we see financial impact when it comes back around? Because now we have maybe 3 or 4 items up for review in 10 years and the cost is going to be like, how do we plan for that renewal in 10 years because like right now, based on this, right, we're looking at maybe 6 or 8 dual language, visual, performing arts, K-5 math. So that's a lot in 1 year. So 10 years from now, are we going to see like a pretty significant curriculum spike, or are we able to maybe adjust a little bit of the smaller ones a year early to kind of not create a huge?
We can look at that. My quick answer right now is this is kind of lining up really beautifully with some smaller adoptions.
Okay.
So it does look like the stars are aligning.
Okay.
It.
Okay.
Because at the rate we're going, we're not going to go through all our ESSER dollars that have been allotted to us. Is that correct?
I'm sure we will.
Vic, do you want to respond to that? But Vic,
Yeah.
Vic,
Okay, well, that's what I was gonna say,
Vic
but-
said we're gonna do the best we can.
Oh, I
We're
know,
gonna,
I-
yeah, we want to,
Use every.
Yeah.
everything that
bloody
we have available.
dollar, yes, I'm with
And I
you.
know
Okay,
that
perfect.
as Vic, correct me if Reichdahl was wrong, but on Monday he said that 100% of ESSER dollars in the state of Washington for the first wave had been used. And I believe it was 88% of 2, so we probably are right in there. And then 41% statewide for round 3. So are we similar to that?
Round 3, we're looking on, we spent all that. We spent all that.
Okay.
So I just want to recap for anybody who might be listening, since Vic doesn't have a microphone. He said we've spent all of round 1, all of round 2,
Pretty sure we're close to spending all that.
close to spending all of round 2 of ESSER dollars, and working on round 3. Thank you.
No, I think, yeah, if we can get this adopted earlier, I think we obviously want to go for that
Yeah.
directly.
Because there is a lag between when we spend it and when we get it back too, right? So, I mean,
We usually don't get reimbursed until the end of
Yeah.
the summer or the fall.
right.
And we'll just have to be sure with the curriculum that it is evidence-based. We have that kind of.
Absolutely. I think that's a great idea. And I especially like the TOSA, the teacher on special assignment, because that's when, like Vic talks about shovel ready for schools.
Yeah.
It's shovel ready
Right.
for teachers,
Exactly.
right? It's the same
Yep.
thing. So not putting more work on staff that's already working, but somebody who's there to kind of coordinate the whole
Yeah.
system. I think that's a great
And I
idea.
will share right now, our elementary teachers each have some grade level leads identified, and by grade level, they're doing some work right now. So they're ready to benefit. They're recognizing what's missing, what's working. So the timing is good for this. And we're also seeing some leaders emerge from those groups who might be a good fit for that.
That's great.
Are there any any extracurricular math things like, there's always like that math is cool and things like that potentially we could use some money for that. To start off a program like that and,
It doesn't. Math is school doesn't need
I-
funding from the district.
yeah, okay. It didn't necessarily mean that particular program, but a program like that where there's like an extracurricular math thing that.
Yeah, the schools have money for advisors and stipends to lead that, and then each school kind of determines how they're going to
And
fill on.
they have, the schools that choose to do that, to use it for
Yeah.
that, they have math club, which would be separate, and then the ones that are, we do have a couple elementaries now that are starting to do math is cool. And so that the person that I know who used to do it, she had math club, but then she also had her math club kids be in math at school. So that would be a personal choice for that advisor.
Wonderful, thank you.
Great, so we'll bring the updated cycle for, formal board approval at an upcoming meeting.
I just
Thanks,
thought of one more
Alyssa.
thing. So, I can't remember the name of it, but that reading program, we had a presentation maybe 2 months ago.
Team Read.
Team Read, yes. I couldn't think of that. And that's in how many schools?
Oh, for ESSER dollars?
Yeah, for ESSER dollars. And that's in a certain number of schools, not all schools. That's maybe something like that too. I mean, anything that kind of brings up like a core score, reading, math, I think maybe something like that,
Yeah.
expand a program like that.
Great.
And that's great because we should have it in every school, but these are limited dollars for a limited period of time. So then we have to have a funding source later.
And just the other thing about Team Read is, right, that's through the Reading Foundation. So it requires, them to have the capacity
To do it. as
on
well.
their end.
Yeah.
Which
to
she
partner
was
with
saying
us, so
they
don't
are
really
still
have
having
right now, but we'll look into it.
Stuff like that, yeah.
Okay,
thank you.
great, thanks, Alyssa.
Listen, one more thing.
Perfect. Okay, I'm not even gonna guess where you want to go to next, so I'm just gonna
I
let
know,
you,
I just
I'm gonna
like to
let you
mix
pick.
it up. Going back up to the first item, which is community engagement, volunteerism, and volunteer coordination. So Robin will join me here when she's able to. So just to recap a couple of things. So we did a last update around our family and parent involvement engagement efforts in September of 2022. And there's quite a bit of board discussion about volunteer data and opportunities for families. What we shared at that time was kind of what our current data was looking like in terms of number of volunteers by school. And, parent involvement and community involvement in schools continues to be a high priority for the board. And so if I recall, there's quite a bit of conversation at that time is what can we be doing to increase volunteerism in our schools? How are we tracking that data? It is one of our, performance indicators. And right now in our district, we don't have like any kind of designated volunteer coordinator at the district. We certainly have people who process the volunteer applications, and through our communications department, we highlight and promote opportunities for, how people can volunteer. And I know, I think in that same presentation, we highlighted some of those. We've also heard a little bit about, people receiving recognition for volunteering and feeling appreciated for their volunteer efforts. And in some districts, and I will say in my former district, we did have a district level volunteer coordinator who processed the applications, helped to match individual people who said, I have an interest in X, and tried to match them to a school. Particularly, that's another issue that's come up, right, is that some schools have fewer maybe parent volunteers that are able to volunteer. And we've got great partnerships with churches and things like that. But in my former district, we did have somebody who processed the applications, made those matches. We did a reception every year for volunteer appreciation. And so there was a person doing that job of volunteer coordination. We also, so that's just kind of one topic. Okay, now shifting gears a little bit, in October, we did our goal report on community collaboration. And one of the things that we do here that is unique to Kennewick, that we didn't have in my former district, is we've got a community education program. And that is geared toward providing opportunities for ongoing education for community members. And that's been a goal for us too, expanding that. And Robin did a great presentation about, how the classes that are offered and the online classes through Ed2Go. We provided an update about the kinds of classes that are taught by community instructors who either volunteer or receive a stipend. And kind of some of the courses that are available through community ed for community people, and highlighted those Ed2Go courses that people pay for. So the idea with community ed is, I think originally, it sounds like it's been around for about 30 years in the district, and the idea was that for it to be self-sustaining, so it would be bringing in the revenue to pay for the running of the program, right? So anyway, this is just recapping some of the information that was shared with you in October. We have seen growth in that program because, we had a great coordinator who was working really hard to grow the program. Of course, it had to go just by the wayside during COVID. We kept the online courses, but we did just not have it because we couldn't do the in-person classes and that kind of thing, but we are getting it ramped back up. We do have this is new data to share that for community ed, the program costs do significantly exceed the program revenue. So there's some historical data here. And it says it was trending toward about 45,000 for this year. And then our coordinator got a new job. So right now we don't have a community ed coordinator because she got a new job. And so what we've done right now, and I've communicated this through a weekly update back in November, that, we've got the Ed2Go classes running right now. But before we moved forward with posting the new position, we wanted to have some conversation with the board about kind of where you want us to go and what your vision might be for this and what direction you want us to take. Another just piece of data is, this is from the Ed2Go courses. And Robin, can you explain this one real quick? I want to make sure I'm getting it correct. What is this showing us?
I just, I pulled how much this Ed2Go is, the online courses. We basically do kind of a accounting administrative function. That's, we market the classes. But there's nobody that needs to coordinate it or teach it from our end. So they go online and they register for our class that they're interested in. There's hundreds and hundreds of classes to choose from. Ed2Go takes their fees out of it, and then they pay us revenue because they're basically coming through our portal to register for the class. And so our revenue from this online program was $640 since September of this year, of last year, 2022.
So we paid the 1,200 to them?
They take 1,200, and then we take,
We're not paying the 1,200, that's from the fees, right?
No, the person registering for the class pays like the 75, or the 105.
Oh,
at the bottom line.
And then it's split
$105, and 75 goes to Ed2Go, and $30 comes back to us.
So what the current situation is the program coordinator for community ed is vacant. We are continuing those Ed2Go course offerings. Since the board has expressed an interest in, family engagement and volunteer programs and how are we going to do that, we just want to have a discussion with the board about, direction. I think, whenever we've had some turnover in the community ed coordinator position too. It's been a little challenging to find somebody to, you know the statistics about how.
We've probably had, I think we've had 5 coordinators since in the last 10 years. One person had been in the position for many, many years. But it's hard to fill, especially now. It's an evening position, so to have a family would be very difficult to hold down this job because she has a supportive partner or family at home. It's just odd hours. It's a lot of recruitment type work, so it's different than education completely. It's marketing, it's advertising, it's sales. It's a lot of coordination, trying to get people to show up on time and teach their classes, trying to build things at the last minute and notify people of cancellations. It's a very dynamic position. definitely showed the potential of the position. So even with that the program didn't break even.
Because it was a popular program for years. I mean, we had really good turnout for all the local, the evening classes, stuff like that. I mean,
It's fun to get in.
yeah.
Do you think some of it is coming back from COVID when we stopped, or did you see a decline? Because I didn't look at those all, but did you see a decline before that?
Yeah, we had a very difficult
Okay.
time trying to get any teachers
I
to commit to a future class. So it took a decent year to get it back up to the most recent numbers.
Just because I think it gets a little confusing when we say students and teachers, because I just want to make sure, I just want to clarify, when she's saying teachers, she's not talking about, KSD teachers. It's
Instructors.
the instructors for the community ed courses, and the students are adults in the community who are taking the community ed courses.
Yes, and all the instructors are volunteers. They might get a small stipend, but and that word crosses over to the world, so I don't want to say stipend, just to cover their planning costs and to execute the course. But others, the majority of them donate it, their time.
When you had the word significantly on that slide about costs or significantly higher than rev, what are we talking about? Like what is our cost and what is our revenue? Are we talking like?
Right, so I'll repeat that because I do have that data, and thank you, Vic. Saves me from going through this. So it's about $160,000 to run the program. The revenues coming in are about 45 to 60 maybe. And so it's costing us about $100,000 to run the program. And that's when, we talk about fiscal responsibility and those kinds of things, and just knowing that the original intent of the program was to be sort of self-sustaining. Before we just went ahead and, kept going, we wanted to bring this conversation to the board and to get direction from you, because I just, I think it's all of our responsibility to sort of evaluate programs and offerings and decide, do we want to continue doing what we're doing? Do we want to change what we're doing? And especially trying to make sure that we're doing, we're focusing on the board's priorities, but also not just like adding positions when we don't have the money to do that. So that's the hard conversation I guess we kind of want to bring to the board.
How many years have we been supplementing this program to the tune of roughly 100,000? This has been the last couple of years, or has it just been recent, like just this last year?
There's some news down there where they brought in a lot more money, but it's still subsidized.
So
pretty much always, it's been some subsidy, but maybe not by 100,000.
yeah, I mean, if the program, it may have served its purpose early on, if we're subsidizing 100,000 a year, maybe we look at more Ed to Go that's, not costing us the money, but we're getting a little bit of the revenue. Maybe we lean more onto the digital platform than continue to run a program that's we're supplementing that's not showing the returns. But
Everybody's taxed, and not everybody takes the education, right? So, I mean, I agree. I agree. I think that every single person in this community is taxed, and that's something you have to be aware of. It's not super easy right now for everybody, so being responsible with those taxes, I think you got to look at that. Yeah.
So how long have you been here, Robin?
11 years.
Okay, so right before or right after you came, they did a analysis of which classes were not paying their way. so to speak.
I did that when I
Okay.
started.
And I'm sure you keep doing that, right? To like how many people show up and et cetera, et cetera.
So on that note, I had heard about a lot of the classes being canceled because they didn't fill the minimum number required to make the class go, basically. And so when I dug into that more, I learned that although we might have had 200, I'm just throwing out a number, 200 class offerings for that session, more than 20% of them didn't run because they didn't meet the minimum numbers. And they were classes that the previous session had not run either. So they had a track record of not running. And so I was asking a lot of questions about why would we continue to offer those and why wouldn't we perhaps offer more of the ones that were filling and just being more strategic about our offerings.
And so
That's
you're,
where that
yes,
came
and
from.
so you're still, I assume, doing that kind of thing, weeding out ones that are not paying their way or whatever.
I would say this last session from the fall was the first time that I had seen classes sell out. Less offerings, so not as
Yeah.
profitable,
Right.
but because they were kind of tapped into what people wanted to take,
Right.
we had classes, multiple classes selling out the first week.
And so do we have a way to talk with the community about, you know, what their needs are now? Because needs are very different for families now than they were 10 years ago even.
We do survey all of our participants after they take each class and what classes they'd want to see. And so I know that there were some ideas from that, but again.
And those are the people that are able and interested, et cetera. But what about those who have not, maybe, a lot of people probably don't even know about this, but who just aren't in the loop of all this? How do, you know, is there a way to get in touch with those?
We've reached out on social media to do surveys, to gather input. So I know that that's one thing.
And do you get very many responses?
No.
It's hard.
Yeah.
I think $100,000 more than enough covers a district level volunteer coordinator that can help really drive volunteers into schools and kind of maybe along your lines about finding those core volunteers that'll go to any school, like a district-wide pool. I mean, I think that is money
Better
well
use
spent
of-
compared to, which I'd hate to see the program go, but if it's, I mean, we got to look at.
It doesn't pay for itself. Then you have to-
And from what Vic said, it hasn't paid for itself for a long time. I don't know that it necessarily, you have to have a break even kind of thing on it, but I guess I would, bow to those of you who work in that department, are there ways that we could cut certain things? I know during Christmas, the family activities were very important. A couple of years ago, kids and parents or kids and grandparents came and made cookies, some of those shorter ones. Do those pay off more? Do the longer ones pay off more? There's all kinds of parts.
So I think it's been 2 years. I looked at ways to bring more revenue in because, there is a capacity with the person coordinating it on how many they can coordinate and how many instructors they can get to commit, how many we can offer based on this person that's doing all the work, right? And so we had been historically offering these classes for $15, I think the max, $15. I think the maximum was $25, but if you looked at the trends going on in our community with cooking classes that are $150, it just wasn't matched up. So we thought we could bump it up, make it an affordable alternative, but still bump up based on demand, but also like a market kind of rate out there. And then the length of the course offering. So if it was a 6-week class, if it was a 2-hour class or just an hour class. And then in conjunction with that, doing the price bump or the cost, we also started offering free classes through community partners. So I don't know if you've noticed that in the catalog, but we've things like safety related, just to create a more well-rounded kind of program. So there are things that people could take that didn't take any money to participate.
And it
in.
doesn't cost the district to provide that either. Right?
And I can safely say that we hardly received any objections to the price increases.
Is that something to think about? This is a
Yeah.
dicey time for families, you know?
It would, yeah, it would take some, I mean, are you talking about possibly increasing
Right.
the costs?
A minimal amount. I mean,
It's just my gut feeling that if we start increasing costs, that we would lose
lose people,
participants.
yeah. That's a hard one.
That's the thing though, like a tax is a cost increase, right? I mean, that's now you're passing a cost increase to every single person. Well, this is at least not optional. You say, yeah, we have to make money. We can't just run programs and lose money. So how much money do we need to break even? This is the cost. And if it doesn't fill, it doesn't fill. Then there's not the demand for it. But you can't just give out money. You can't just tax all the people just to run these courses and just lose money. It's just not responsible.
Well, and I don't think we've even talked, I mean, what'd you say, 5 coordinators in 8 years or 4 in 8 years? I mean, you have the additional costs of staffing, hiring, onboarding, training new people every other school year. It's a tough position to fill. I mean, like I said, I think, I mean, I lean towards the online stuff, and if we want to do district volunteer stuff and kind of look in that more,
Or raise the cost a bunch.
or, yeah.
So that actually makes money or breaks even.
I'm not sure I'm ready to give up on it just
Yeah,
yet.
not either.
I think that we, again, I'm all good with charging, going rate and trying to find a, if we're charging $25, but it's cost us 75, then, we need to get a lot closer to $75 to run that course if that's what we're going to do. In the grand scheme of things, $100,000, it's real money, I get it, but at the same time, it's also $100,000 out of a $280 million budget. So we're not going to lower anyone's taxes by dropping $100,000, and we can cut $100,000 in about 97 different ways. Again, I'd like to see us look at it again, whether it's raising the cost of the classes, lowering our class offering, making it smaller, because if we have, get 75 classes, let's get down to what are the 25 most popular classes we have. Let's look at that, see how do we get those filled? How do we make that, be a push and go that direction? Because that will, in my mind, it will lower the workload for this coordinator, maybe get more of a repeat customers here for repeat teachers. Anyway, that's my thought. I just don't think it needs to be an either or. Either we're going to have a what do we call this? Our community education coordinator or a voluntary coordinator. I guess I just see that as a one or the other.
Robin, are there additional Ed2Go classes that we are not providing that are available out there? Out of all their things that they provide, are we?
I
using
don't
all of them?
believe,
Okay.
I don't believe so. We have their full offerings, and it's everything from trade certifications
Yeah, there's some-
to, I mean, it's not like the type of classes we
No.
offer.
I know that during
Completely
COVID,
different.
a lot of people rebranded themselves by taking those classes, and they got certifications in different things, and then got some different jobs, especially when people were working online. So those are really valuable classes to our community, and so are the other ones. The other ones are, a lot of them are more fun ones, but there are some very important ones also that people can take. There's one that I took years ago. It was how to be the executor for a family member for their will. So there are some very important community ones out there. But I just wanted to make sure we weren't missing anything out on the Ed2Go classes, but thanks.
So is this something we'd kind of look back again, like in a few months and just kind of see where we're at, and maybe at that point make a more solid determination or path forward?
Yeah, so I guess, what we need to know is, should we be moving forward with hiring a new community ed coordinator? Because we don't have one right now. Even if we were to, it's going to probably be a challenge for this year. We can continue the Ed2Go classes and maybe, but by the time somebody got ramped up, I just don't know how many classes we could get offered for spring. And Robin would probably be able to answer that more, but that's kind of the decision point, is do we move forward with recruiting and hiring a new person and keep the program going and continue to try to grow the program, which has been a goal, and is that, you know, is that still a board priority? Is that still what you want us to do? And I get that it might not be an either or, and we can have a separate conversation about the board priority, but we just need to allocate resource. We're just trying to be really mindful, right, of resource use and priorities. So
bearing that in mind, that it would take time for this person, so we wouldn't have this January to March classes or whatever, correct?
Right now, we're not offering
Right.
classes,
Just
because
Ed to
there's
go.
nobody.
Right. So.
We have Ed to go though.
Right, but we don't have the in-person ones or whatever. So let's say that we decided to go ahead and hire the person, and let's say they started in March. That's a stressful, hard time to get that all ready, right? They wouldn't really be starting things until September, correct?
To provide you with an example, when we hired Brooke, she hit the ground running, and it took her a good 6 months to get up,
Okay.
get the catalog and all ironed out, people committed to dates.
So, September or later. So I'm just wondering, once you lose people, right? That's always a problem when you, like, if your restaurant closes and people go somewhere else, do they come back, So it's the same thing. So if we did that and went ahead and said, yes, hire somebody, would that position, not the person, but the position be able to get this back up and running again to the tune of not having $100,000 in the hole?
It would take several months, but we could do it again.
Like
Yeah.
6 months-ish, you're thinking?
I would give them 6 months
Okay.
to get it up and going. Possibly sooner. They could do some what we call pop-ups, where they get, so maybe they commit and we can market it as much as we can and try to fill it.
Just do that.
Yeah.
So
It's not quite the long process that we used to have.
So, Tracy, can you go back to the Ed to Go page there? So we're up, so what numbers are we, how much is that up from year to year? I mean, it was up a tremendous amount, wasn't it? The
participation?
Participation.
Okay, so let's just see. This is what we're offering.
That was the 200 increase in participation.
But that wasn't just Ed to Go, was it? I'm sorry. Okay.
No, it had there.
Oh, it's 221%.
That's
Is
over-
that number skewed at all because of COVID? I mean,
It is skewed
Yeah.
because of COVID, because,
21%.
Because it was at 0.
right,
So how does that, do we know how that compares to the participation level at, I mean, I see a percentage, but how many people are actually using it? Is it 100, is it 500, is it 1,000? Versus how many people were taking the in-person classes?
Previous.
Previously.
I'm sorry, I don't have those numbers.
Yeah, that's
but
fine.
I can
I think
definitely get
that
those
might
numbers.
be, that would answer my question for me, is like, look, if we were serving 500 people a year in the live in-person classes, and we're serving 500 people online, then it seems to me that it's kind of a net deal, so maybe we're okay without the in-person classes. But again, I just.
So in person, I would say it's in the hundreds.
Okay.
Possibly around the 300
to 500.
500, I would guess.
Sure.
And for the Ed to Go classes, it's one of those things that the more you put into it, and the more you put into it would be money,
Sure.
the more you would get out of it, because it involves marketing.
Okay.
And letting people know about it.
Sure. Okay. Well, yeah, I'm just wondering, because again, if we're serving the need online, then then I'm okay looking at discontinuing or not reviving the in-person classes. If there's a huge difference, then I think we need to look at that. Yes, sir. Ron's got anything on that?
Yeah, I have a quick point. A while back, I introduced an idea about a district pep club, district
A booster.
booster. And you came back and you said that idea could be feasible if we had a coordinator or a leader.
Well, just to clarify a little bit, it's allowable under policy, so it is feasible, but a booster would require like a community member, like a non-district employee to set that up, because it's a separate, it's a separate entity from the district.
Okay,
So,
so could that community person turn to this community outreach person or coordinator to make that happen? Could a community person have that person as a contact to help with the cause or causes that they may undertake? Yeah, I'm just trying to give a dual purpose to this person, so that during that 5 months that they're trying to coordinate, you're getting some bang for your bucks during that time period. That person is not just putting together, I shouldn't say not just, because that's a major undertaking, but in addition to trying to coordinate these classes, they're also trying to coordinate more volunteerism and more involvement of the community. That would be a secondary function of that. Am I making sense of what I'm trying to say here? I see I don't see clarity on your forehead.
Just trying to think of how that works.
Well, I was, wondering if I could share this with you, if you're okay. So in my last school district, I served as a communications person, wanted to resurrect our school's foundation, which we didn't have, but we desperately needed. And so in my own time, I recruited influential community members to reform a board. And I served as a liaison on their board, non-decision maker, and helped them along the way get started. That's kind of how I see,
Yes.
We can
Yeah.
contribute.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have a different experience.
no, in terms of it, in my former district, there was a schools foundation that existed. There was a person who worked for the schools foundation as their executive director, and they did fundraising and all of that, and then schools applied for grants and things, and they provided grant money to schools. They like, I met with them regularly as superintendent and that kind of a thing. So it's a little different from what you're saying, but so I think that in both of these situations and both of the examples, you need a community entity of some sort that forms and has either volunteers or paid people, working, and they're their own kind of financial entity. And then there's people in the district who work with them.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. Okay.
So Robin, I'm just trying to think, you were talking about marketing, trying to get this out to broader group. Do we ever work with the Tri-City Chamber of Commerce or anybody like that to try to share the love of this? Or any other group that you can think of?
Yes, so the coordinator is out there promoting the program as much. We've tried to keep the marketing dollars low because of not wanting to, I don't think we spent more on marketing in many, many years. There's no ramping up in that area. So it is all word of mouth. It's media exposure. It's getting on radio stations to talk about, bring a teacher with you. And that's how we promote it. Most recent years, social media has been the best way to reach the most people, and a very robust email list. And that program has a very robust email list.
Yes. I was just thinking, through the Chamber of Commerce, and there are several other groups like that, the professional, I know you belong to the professional, whatever your job, communications people, sorry. I know they have a group. So let's say I work at Battelle and I do communications at Battelle, and you could come and talk to me, and then I could send that out to my whole Battelle staff. I don't know if we do that kind of systemic outreach kind of thing. I'm just trying to think of ways.
I'm sure there's a lot of I think those are all great ideas on ways to market the program.
And free ways, I'm thinking.
And
ways
free
that we don't
ways,
pay.
right. So, Yeah, the coordinator just needs the time and the contacts to do
Right.
that, and yeah. It's kind of a job where you wear a lot of hats.
Yeah, oh, it's a tough job. But-
I just think it's gonna be, I mean, if we hire someone for this role, I mean, you almost have to give them the next 6 months plus the next year to see if the program's
at least
fully,
year.
fully functioning. So I just don't know. I mean, if we want to commit to another 18 months when we've got some data that shows that we're potentially hemorrhaging 100,000 on the program, I don't know. That's,
I think we also have to look at it as a community service. And community service is not always a profit-making entity. You know, you have brought up several times, let's get the community more involved. You're not gonna make money every time you go to get community involvement. And I think by having these courses, having it sanctioned by the Kennewick School District, part of our payback or payoff is that we're getting better feelings about what we're giving to the community, what we're contributing to the community. Because yeah, we have the kids and we have the kids from grade 1 through 12, but we also have the families from grade 1 through 12. And the learning, I'm getting on my soapbox now, but the learning doesn't stop in the classroom. And if we can show that the families are gaining by learning outside of the classroom, that's a plus for us. Even if it costs us money, it's a plus for the district to show that value
Yeah.
with the district.
yeah, no, I get it.
Can we just charge the appropriate amount? Just at least break even?
Okay, I'm
And
gonna
see
say,
what- And see just what happens. I mean, we don't know. Maybe it's, like Mike says, we have 25 classes.
that becomes exclusive
Right,
to the people that can
Exactly.
afford it. And I don't want to exclude anybody.
and this,
But you're
Brings
including
people-
I
everybody.
want
By
to include.
charging everybody, by raising, I know it's not very much, but you keep doing all these little things and that raises everybody's taxes. So it's not really fair for all these other people. You raise their taxes so you could redistribute it to,
What? That's the
taxes
that's the very essence of a community. Everybody helping each other, and there are going to be times when I can help more, and there'll be times when you can help more. But together we have a great community,
I-
and that's what taxes are about.
I hear what you're saying. I think I would need to have more information. I need to know how many people are taking advantage of the classes, the individual classes versus the online classes. Like I'd need to see more data before I would be comfortable committing to hiring someone and pushing because I'd like to know where to go. Like, do we limit the number of classes, like Mike said, to very ones that people are attending? Or, how do we, push out some digital ones? Like, would Ed to Go give us, like, can we do like a promo code like KSD to get like $10 off and make, like, I don't know, like, how do we?
one of the things about the in-person classes is it brings people into our buildings and our facilities. And this was many years ago, I don't remember. I was at Hawthorne and there was some horrible concrete out front. And one of the ladies, I was there in the evening, one of the ladies coming to a class tripped and fell over the horrible concrete. And she didn't sue the district, she was very nice, but she said, oh my, our schools shouldn't have to have this. And so people see our beautiful new buildings and what we've done with their money and how well we've used it for their students and their use. But they also see our buildings that maybe need some love and tax help. And so I think having our people, to what Ron was saying, having our parents and our community members in our schools, first of all, it's a good use of our school because, it's in the evening and people can be there when they're not usually there. But I think there's some pride to being that's my school, that's my daughter's school, that's my son's school. So I think there's some use to being in our physical buildings too. And it also, a lot of people talk about the fact that, during COVID, we didn't have person-to-person connections and we missed that. And many people will tell you that there was a lot of depression in people. So if we want to have that not be the case, then providing opportunities to be in our schools and be with other community members and make new friends, as we ask our children to do, is probably a worthwhile thing to be doing.
So I think what we're hearing overall is asking for some more data. I took good notes, lots of good dialogue about this topic. So we'll go back and provide some more data and an update and continue the Ed2Go classes and get the data to you so we can, make an informed decision moving forward.
Sounds good.
Okay,
Plan.
thank you.
Wonderful, thank you.
Can we talk about the first slide that you put up there in regards to the different programs that schools had to get parents into the schools?
The volunteer.
Is the volunteer data?
Yeah, just volunteer.
That we
Yeah,
shared.
We did a survey to all the different schools and they gave you numbers of how many different programs they had to get community members into their schools, helping kids. and stuff.
Yeah, so that's a little different from this. I think the one thing we did was a whole audit thing of, what kind of programs and things do you have? And then we shared this data, and then we've implemented some new ways of tracking the volunteer data this year so we can bring it back to you next year with the goal of increasing volunteerism.
Can we also set like a minimum requirement, but a high level goal per school? Like,
Minimum.
I don't know, so many community members in your school per week or month or something. And
Well, we can't force people to volunteer.
I was gonna say, what would be the purpose of that?
purpose is to create an emphasis for each principal to reach out and work, and for Robin and us and everybody else to just really, have that engagement.
I know that not just principals, but throughout our buildings, our teachers and other staff members are working very hard to do that. I don't know that there needs to be a goal, written goal. I know that's their goal. I mean, when I worked in the buildings, that was our goal, to get people to come in and do things.
Just as a reminder, what we do have in our strategic plan for our community-focused goal is a performance indicator target that we have greater than 2,500 community members volunteering in our schools district each year. So that's the stated target. It's not a by building target, but that is something that the board approved when you approved the updated performance targets for this year. But I think, if the board wants to talk about setting a target that's more building specific for
Breaking that down a little
next
bit more.
year, now would be a good time to start that discussion.
Yeah, so I'm saying, like, break that down a little bit more and yeah. Maybe because
So
you
it's
look at,
kind of up to you
well, you
guys.
look at there, like, you look at one school's got, I don't know, 8, another one's
Yeah.
got 200.
Yeah, and ECAP, is the preschool
Okay,
program, so.
well, okay.
I think,
yeah. Highlands, 27.
I think each school
14, but ABC.
I would hope each school would have goals that they set to get to certain numbers, maybe personally. I think, I go to are we doing everything we can as a district to inform the community about volunteering and making it easy for them to volunteer, getting the form in, we have Power School now, so we can easily push volunteer notices out to 20,000 accounts or whatever it is. And so not necessarily, for me, I don't necessarily, a goal would be tough, I think, for schools, but if we're doing and using all our resources to push the volunteer piece, I think that's something we can easily do. I know my phone buzzes with Power School stuff regularly, so.
And with Parent Square.
Parent
Yeah.
Square, yeah, that's what I was referring to,
Okay,
sorry.
yeah. No.
It's me, yes, I know, people are confused when they read it.
Yeah.
And so a goal is something you hope to obtain, and I know that every one of our buildings hopes to attain the best that they can get. Some of our buildings have things in the way of parents being able to volunteer. When you're working 2 jobs, it's hard to have time to volunteer. So, you know, that, Ron, that was your baby about, you know, a group of people who would volunteer wherever as needed. And that's, I love that idea, and that's a great way to go, because we have people in the community that aren't connected to a particular school. But, you know, if you don't have kids, or you just moved here from someplace and you see a school, but you're not connected, you know, it'd be great to just be able to call up and say, hey, we need somebody to do blank, and they would come. So I love Ron's idea. I'd like to put a little more time and energy into that.
The other thing is occurring to me, you know, like there's, on the one hand, there's volunteer data and the people who are coming in to work, right, on a volunteer basis at our schools. And then there's the, you know, community involvement, parent engagement, showing up at math nights, showing up at school events, and none of that is reflected in this data. So I also feel that that's an indicator of, you know, parent involvement, community involvement in schools. It doesn't necessarily mean people coming into work in schools, right, but attending events. And I think that's just another piece of the picture, and we should probably think about collecting that data, because I think that's just as important. You know, how many parents are showing up to school events? And I will tell you anecdotally, but, you know, I mean, it's been a challenging couple of years because of COVID, but wow, we've got huge turnout at school events, not just open houses. Some of you went to the open houses, but, you know, math nights and, you know, events. And so we don't really track that, but we could think about that as well, because I think that shows another piece of this picture.
That's good to hear, because when I was involved with my kids in school, that wasn't the case, Tracy. It was poor turnout. We had to beg people to come to school plays or events or musicals or what have you. We actually had to call relatives and say, hey, because it would almost be an insult to the kids that were participating. And that carried out in sports also. You would go to my early days in the Tri-Cities, you would go to a Kennewick and Kennewick game and couldn't get a place to sit. In the latter years, it was open stadium. You could sit. It just wasn't that participation. And I think by involving the community on a district basis would also put a little pride in the community at whole. They would take pride into, let's say, a school make it to the district playoffs. All of a sudden, you actually are representing Kennewick School District, and you have fans of Kennewick School District that might be more interested in the district playoffs, and not just sports. I mean, you know what I'm saying. I think you guys know what I'm saying.
Do we track how many times, say, John Smith volunteers at Amistad? Like, we know how many times each person's, because I would like to see something where not only do we recognize the maybe like in June, right, our last meeting of the year, we recognize all the volunteers, but gosh, if we have schools where there's some people who are showing up 10, 15, 20 times, like maybe we provide them a certificate and a recognition and read out their name, roll call at the board meeting or something, because I'm sure there's a lot of folks who put a lot of time in, and I think that would be a good thing. We could invite them, but
we had volunteered
Kiwanis groups
kind of
who
thing.
have adopted schools, and I mean, there's a lot. So I think that's a great idea. And what we're doing this year is we have asked each school to track, like, because they volunteers sign in and all of that. So I can follow up with K-12 and see if we're also tracking, like, is it this, you know, the same person, that kind of thing. So, because I think we want to make sure people feel appreciated for what they're doing.
I know we're beating it to death, but I think the Amazing Shake is a good example of the community responding outside of the boundaries of a school.
For sure.
Yeah, and just I don't mean the Amazing Shake was a small thing, but in this realm of everything, one small thing, like, you know, if I'm a community member, that might be my one thing for the year, right? But that's okay, because, you know, person A every year says to Jason, sign me up next year. I want to
Yeah.
come
Yeah.
next year. And sometimes there's not more value. There's as much value in that than there is the consistent volunteer, which, thank God for those people because that's how schools run. But that one person who says, this is so important to me that kids learn to shake hands and look me in the eye. I was a PR person out at Hanford and that's who I hire. So that one person that comes one time for 2 hours is as valuable as the 200-hour person. And so I want people to have connections, like Ron's talking about. I want to be a Kennewick volunteer, not a Hopper necessarily, but Kennewick. And I think that's missing in our communities, right? That's how we build communities. So I'd like to really work with that.
Like I've been saying that since the first day I got here.
Okay. So we good?
We're good.
Okay. All right, we're gonna take a 5-minute break here, get everyone a chance to stretch their legs. We'll come back here at 7:45.
So can I ask, we have student board reps and communication protocol, is that the only two we have left?
Okay, it's 7:45. We're going to reconvene here, see if we can wrap up our last two public programs here.
Great.
Next on the list is student board representatives.
Okay, so board wanted to talk about some ideas about student board reps. I've given you a hard copy of our current policy and procedure pertaining to student board reps, and I've pasted it up on the screen so everybody can see. So I think the two ideas talked about were the number of student board reps and the potential of giving student board reps an advisory vote. So I wanted to start with, like I always do, what does our policy say? Because if there's changes, they might require policy updates. So the current policy does speak to one representative. But again, you know, it's board policy, and if the board wants to change things, they can, and then we just update the policy accordingly. But this is what the policy currently says about student board reps. And then there is some language in the procedure that says that students will not have a vote. So it says right here, participation in discussion. When applicable, however, student rep may not make any motion or vote. So if the board wants to consider having more student reps, or giving the student rep or reps an advisory vote, we just need to have the conversation and then update the policy accordingly. So I'll just hand it over to you.
If I'm not
for
mistaken, it looks
discussion.
like we could have there's nothing in here that I see that says we couldn't have an like a secondary or a second student advisor. But as far as the vote, according to this policy, that's a no.
You could just change that.
The only thing I would say is it's written right now, it talks to the student, right?
Oh, okay.
A student. So it would just it's just updating policy language if you want to do that, but
So
I just want to start with
I'm the
what we
one that
have.
brought up the multiple reps, and there are many ways done, you know, throughout the country and throughout the state. One of the more common ones is to have a junior and a senior. And some actually go freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, but a junior and a senior because, as I said before, I mean, some people jump on board and they're just right in there, and Zachary would have been a great example of that. And some people take a little more time because they're not really used to this. By the time they get on board and they get comfortable and they feel able to speak, they may have a month or two left. And so, because May is the end because they graduate in June. So if districts who have at least two, you know, one is going to come on as a senior, they just get the year, but the junior then, like being a vice president or assistant principal, you're learning.
Like the
Then,
WASDA.
right, and then you move in. So I just, from what I see in districts I've worked in where they've done that, it just makes our student voice more knowledgeable and more, I'm not sure the word, more knowledgeable, but more impactful, I think is the word that I'm looking. So they really have time to understand. And it's not just a pro forma, because I think in some districts it's just pro forma. You say, oh, look, we've got our student rep. Isn't that nice? Pat on the back. But they're really actually effective workers with us, and I could see
So you're
that.
saying we should, or your recommendation here is having someone you would be elected your junior year for a 2-year term.
Yes. And you'd have that one person that would just finish out the first, but then after that, you know, everybody would be as a junior.
So I've been thinking about this one actually quite a bit since Ron mentioned this. I believe the WASDA model policy calls for 2 student reps in a non-advisory vote currently, if I remember reading that correctly today. I agree with the 2 reps because I believe it gives that junior the year to really kind of get informed and stay on top of the decisions. I see that junior person kind of, like, I would envision like, okay, we're at a board meeting, so they're out maybe with the cabinet, they're taking notes, they're listening, they're getting informed, and then you have like the senior who's kind of the mouthpiece of the student, and they're sharing and whatnot, and then maybe that junior fills in if that senior rep is gone or something. But I think to have that person, to have like a learning year to kind of get to understand the processes and what we're doing and the information, I think would help them as they kind of move into that senior role the second year.
So once we get this going, we will only vote on the junior person?
Correct.
So if,
Unless the person who was a junior and then became a senior, for whatever reason, couldn't do it.
so what would happen then?
I guess,
just
Then
vote
you'd
for junior,
have-
senior.
well, they're still a junior because you wouldn't want to short them a year, but then I guess you'd have to have a 1-year fill-in as you would for any elected official, right?
Or not fill it?
Oof, yeah, I suppose,
Because you'll be
Right.
voting mid-year,
right?
and you like what you were just speaking of, getting used to the process and all that. If a person leaves halfway through, it would take halfway through to get them voted back in almost, would it not?
I just want to make sure I'm following, and I'm sorry, I'm tired. It's getting late,
So
so
if
I'm
the
I'm
person-
not
Getting
tracking
late.
maybe. So if the board moved in that direction, I think, like this spring, right, we would interview and take applications for the junior position and the senior position, right?
Okay.
Right, then they would both start next year. The senior would do 1 year. I mean, it'd take a year to write, and then the
Right.
junior would,
Have to.
and then the following year,
We'd just be looking for that
Pick a
junior
junior.
Right.
position to bring
am I
someone
tracking?
in.
Yes.
That,
Yes.
okay.
But
Right.
then what Ron said is accurate. So let's say junior person does junior year, but they move away or they can't do it or whatever. And so their senior year, they're not now able to do the job. So do you just choose a different person, another person, or do you just have that junior then have it only 1 year? I would hate to only have a 1 year.
You know, Diane, I think that's a whole lot of what ifs in that. I think we totally get planning for the worst case scenario, but I think at the same time, if we're really saying if we want
We
to
can
have.
work it
We
out.
can
yeah.
work it out. And if that happens, I mean, things happen all the time,
Yeah.
and we just have to
Have to
deal with it.
revisit.
You have to revisit, and
And I
and
think-
we may say, you know, we're just going to keep one this year. We're going to let them
And the
cycle through.
two reps is separate from the advisory vote. So I think we need to make sure we keep that
Yeah,
separate.
that's two.
Yeah,
And we're
two
not voting tonight.
No, but we're just talking
We're
about
just
it.
talking.
But I really do. And I have tried to watch online over the last 6 months, the districts that do, that I could see online, that have student reps as advisory voters. And it's very different. Each district does it differently. But some of them would, like London was going to go and do a survey, and she would bring that back, and that would be, her advisory vote would be a voice of the students or your group that you already have, your superintendent advisory group. Some actually, the students do their own research and they sit on the board and they do the same research that board members would do, and then they come up with their advisory vote. So it depends on each board as to how they flavor that.
So I have a suggestion then for the reading to bring to our next board meeting. I suggest we put in parentheses, ask for representatives. High school student representatives will serve on the board, and maybe even delete A. And just make all those,
Make
with
it
the
plural.
parentheses ask, with possible plural. And for the part about, I think we're in agreement about advisory vote. And I would like to say that the student representative will participate in board discussions, including advisory vote, but will not have the right to make motions, standing votes, hold board offices, or attend executive sessions.
Yes.
So I'm going to disagree. I don't necessarily agree with the advisory vote. And a couple reasons, and I'm just going to share this. One, I think it puts them in a kind of a interesting position, especially if the vote has to do with maybe something that's a little controversial. For instance, you know, we voted the race and the curriculum policy, which seemed to be a little controversial. We had the vote, I think when Zach was on board, where we voted about the library book. There was votes in the past about mandates and returning back to school. And so I feel like if the student rep is voting on those, that they didn't run, I guess they didn't run to necessarily kind of go through some of the stuff that we do with hearing, you know, stuff from the community or whatnot, right? So let's say a student rep voted to do away with the mask mandates and whatnot. There, you know, there's going to be some people that are upset about it, and we're putting them in a position that could be a safety issue, whether that's out in the community where a community member may approach them and discuss something with them, or maybe even back at school where others might be upset that they did that. So I feel like we get their voice. They share what they're hearing, but if we put them in that predicament with a vote, I mean, could their vote be manipulated? Like, honestly, like,
It's an
does a
advisory
parent,
vote.
I know, but does a parent, like, as a parent, your child is on the student rep board and they're gonna make an advisory vote on the levy. But the parent has been talking for months now that I'll never pass the levy, we'll never do this, blah, blah, blah. So now their parent has been kind of swaying that potential vote. What, you know, now what if they don't vote what their parents want and what, so I just think it puts them in a precarious position where they could have issues with opposite sides of what they vote. And I don't think they necessarily deserve that.
Interesting.
The hate that comes our way, specifically my way, as everybody knows, I would never want a kid to go through that.
And why do you think a kid would go through that?
If they had an opinion that people didn't like, that some people didn't like, there are certain groups who are very, very mean and hateful, and
Yes, they are.
and
I agree with
and
that.
we're elected officials. We signed up for that, you know.
Then we shouldn't have the student at all, because they give their opinions. in the
Yeah.
meeting. So we shouldn't put them through that, because they can draw, a person that's wanting to be hateful and meanful can draw that conclusion from what they say at our meetings. And we ask them opinions at our meetings.
Mhm.
So those same hateful people, or that same endangerment you talking, it's established. Our meeting is public, everyone can listen. So if a student rep speaks up, which we ask them to do, that's part of our interview process, we wean out the ones that would not speak out. And if they speak out, they're on public record.
But they don't always speak out. Sometimes they're quiet and they don't know enough about it, and they're at school and they're studying and they haven't studied these certain issues, and now we're asking them to make an advisory vote on an issue they don't. Now, if they want to give an opinion, they can give an opinion, but if they don't have an opinion on that, then they just hold it and they don't have.
How many of our student, I'm sorry. Go
No,
ahead.
go ahead. No, I'm just gonna,
No, I'm repeating myself.
my thought here is we can give them the option to vote. They can abstain,
Yeah.
they can not vote. If they, again, if there's something they don't want to vote on, or they say, I'm not comfortable, it's great, just abstain from the vote. It's not, there's a non-issue.
That's true.
It's
not mandatory.
There's a learning opportunity here to allow them to vote. Again, it's a non-binding vote. It's just they're stating their opinion. But again, they don't have to if they don't want to. I just think it'd be interesting to offer that to them and make it clear that you do not have to vote. You don't have to participate in this. If you'd like to, chime in, we're happy to have it. If not, totally fine.
And hopefully their vote, or not hopefully, their vote should be connected to student voice, other students who are informing them. No, they can't get all of our students, but, through different groups, they can get them through the student advisory group, they can get them. So as for manipulation, certainly parents have impact, right, on their students, but probably no more so when I think about our student reps that we've had. They're pretty, what's the word I'm looking for, Ron?
Savvy. is
Yes,
what I
thank you. And that's exactly what I've seen. They're very savvy, they're very knowledgeable. That's why they're our student reps. And I don't know that they're any more manipulable, able to be manipulated is better word, than any of the rest of us are. I think high school students are generally pretty independent beings, and I certainly would not want, I had a death threat, right? So I would never want that for a child. And I know they're young adults, but they're still children to me. And I would never want that. And so there are things that we can do to make sure that that doesn't happen. So, there's there's adult kinds of things and there's young adult things, and we protect them, I think, from those particular things that may not be okay, but there are not kind people all over in the world, and they're not kind people everywhere our students and our children go. And so I think we need to understand how bright they are and how knowledgeable they are, and give them, with our very careful guidance, that opportunity, because boy, I've seen some of those students do some amazing things in our state. We now have students on the State Board of Education, and they are voting members now.
Nobody's saying that they're not amazing.
No, but
It's not
they
even
are
the
now,
same subject.
they are now
Yeah.
voting members at the State Board of Education, which just happened a year ago. And I believe there are 2 of them. And so if the State Board of Education and all the things that they deal with, which are, even more so than ours, deems that they are able to make those informed decisions based on their good research, I don't know that we would be able to say we shouldn't do that too.
I think the amazing point, Kate, is they're making amazing steps on the state level.
Absolutely.
They're participating on the state level at amazing levels and making amazing decisions, and they're empowered. And I think that's what I want to make sure our students, we're not just have a nameplate and a chair for these folks, that they are valued, their opinions are valued, and we want them to come out of here knowing that they have a voice. They can vote. They do, they are heard. And I hear what you guys are saying, but if a kid stands up in class at a debate and share, they also open themselves up to that kind of scrutiny. Anyone that opens their mouth, I'm opening my mouth right now and open this scrutiny. You guys, you got elected. We all got elected, but you were the last to get elected. You said some things, scrutiny. So it's going to happen. And the people that we look for that position are, I guess all of our kids are our future. That's the future that we're depending on, that will share their thoughts, their opinions. And I don't want to shut them up. I want to encourage them to be heard.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think they are being heard, and I don't think anyone up here would say Zachary wasn't heard or London hasn't been heard. When we nail it down to letting them and saying you can vote, I think we put a lot of pressure on them that maybe they're not looking for. Again, there's that safety concern, and then on top of that, okay, so it's just an example. So we voted last meeting on the flag policy.
Mm-hmm.
So now all of a sudden one person doesn't listen to the voice of the student if the student voted opposite. So now every time we vote, if someone isn't in line with the student, we're not listening to the student. Well, like, how does that?
No.
You know what I mean? Because I know, but that's what I'm saying. But that's what's going to be potentially the.
I don't understand it, because that's the process. They're being introduced to the democratic process, and the not democratic process. Well, yeah, the democratic process where your opinion is shared,
Sure.
someone else hears it, and we may not agree, but as a group, we take that information and we make a decision.
Yeah.
When we set that person over there, even sometimes before we vote, we said, okay, we would like to know your opinion. That's just as good as a vote. We're putting them on the spot right there. They're just not saying A or nay, but they sit there and say, as a student, this affects me this way. It's out there.
I think we're opening a can of worms to potential concerns for our students that we don't need to bring on it. That's just where I'm at, so.
Okay.
So Ron, you were talking about you wanted to add on not vote at, or not participate in an executive session. So a non-elected person couldn't be in that anyway. So legally, I don't know that it needs to be there, but Bronson could go over that just to maybe make it clear.
You mean in the voting process?
Right, when you were talking about they couldn't attend executive or vote. So they can't do that anyway because they're not elected by the voters. But it's good to make it clear.
Yeah, I don't care. I just want to put it somewhere that we're advocating, saying that they can do an advisory vote.
Right.
So what I think I'm hearing is agreement, general consensus on the idea of the the two. So I'll do that. I'll update the policy and bring it to the next meeting, and then you can vote on it. And I'll update the procedure with the advisory vote language, and then you can vote on it at the meeting. Sounds like everybody's maybe not all on the same page, but, okay. So this is a logistic question. I just want to make sure. So the way you've been talking about it with the number of reps, I'm imagining the dais as we have it set up right now still works, because the senior would be sitting in the dais and the junior would be sitting at a
With the cabinet.
table, cabinet, and taking the notes and so forth, right?
That's why I see it.
And they
Okay.
could sit, you know, the chair closest to the dais too, right? So that. they're-
Sure, I'm just saying we don't have to
Right.
reconfigure the.
No, so that they're still
Okay.
right there
Okay.
and toward the
Okay.
front.
Yeah,
but-
yeah. I just want to make sure I'm got that right. Okay?
And I
All
think
right.
that's a great start, and, you know, there could be lots of iterations of this as time goes on, too. But that also gives us more opportunity, or gives students more opportunity to participate, and, you know, what Ron's saying, and it's a leadership opportunity for our students, and it, you know, if we talk about making real-world skills is always my thing, and that's a real-world skill. Our students usually are involved in other things anyway, but this is another skill. When you write that on your CV for a job and you say for 2 years I was a student rep, that's a really big deal for students when they're applying for jobs or colleges. So that's a step up for them too.
Can I also add, kind of, it's not along the lines of what we just talked about, but is this policy, now that we're looking at students for 2 years, can we work an interview process in where maybe they go through the interview process, but then the board, can the 5 of us interview those candidates? I think if we're going to select students for 2-year terms, I think it's important that we all have a chance to be involved. I mean, I don't know.
I personally think the process works well now, because we appoint someone from this board, 2 people from this board to be part of the interview process. I don't know if, unless you're talking about interviewing them during the stated meeting, because outside of the stated meeting, we're asking additional time from the board members to meet just to elect the student reps. And right now we're saying, like, hey, let's choose myself and Micah to represent the board in the interview process with the staff. So we have a staff of people interviewing the student reps now.
Right. Yeah.
So why change that?
And with 2 board members already.
So if we want to do that, I mean, as long as it's open to all board members, so if it's 2 or 5, whoever can show up.
Yeah.
Well, if you
Well,
do.
And we can just
5,
post it as a
it
meeting
would
if,
be a
Right.
meeting.
Who
we just
selects
have to
it?
make sure we post it
Yeah,
as a meeting.
I'm just saying, I want everybody to have the, I don't want to narrow it down to just 2 of us. If everybody's interested in doing it, let's find a way to do it. I know you wanted to sit in on the last one as well.
Yeah, but I was okay that I wasn't, because of 2. Okay, I see what you're saying. If 3 wants to do it, we should have 3 do it. If all 5 want to. Okay.
You know, one thing, just, I realized that, I don't know that we have done this, so we can start doing this, but there's somewhere in here, now I can't find it, it read that the board needed to vote to approve appointing the board member, and I think we've just sort of introduced the student board member, taking the recommendation of the committee, but we haven't actually had the board vote, so we'll
Before we
start
introduce,
doing that
okay.
moving forward. But yeah, I mean, from my perspective, if whoever wants to be part of that interview process, if it's 3 or more, we just need to post it as a board meeting and we can do that.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying, let's put it in there. We'll discuss it. If it doesn't pan out, then it doesn't pan out, but it's just
And
another.
then under qualifications for application number 1, student must be in grades 9, 10, or 11 when applying. I mean, 9, if they're, I mean, it would start at 10, right? They would start in 10th grade and they would apply for their 11th grade year. So what's the 9th grade?
Yeah, I mean, I think as it's currently written, it was open to 9th graders. And that, if you want that, do you want me to update that part too?
You can bring it for reading,
Okay,
discussion.
okay.
I'm okay if it's a dynamite 9th grader.
Well, if But then that changes it, are we going to have them for junior, senior, or are we going to just have two? I mean, some districts just have two. It doesn't matter the grade.
Just have two, doesn't matter the grade.
I sort of say 2 also, but we can discuss that.
Yeah.
Sake of time tonight, we can discuss that. Or not. we can
I mean,
say
there
no.
are districts that have elementary kids on their boards too, so it's
No,
like,
we're not doing
That might be a bridge too far.
and they sit more
I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that.
adjunct, like, but I mean, it's kind of interesting to watch the ones that do it. The kids that choose to do that are kids that are really into this and
Sure.
they,
To the city council.
no, I mean, it's very interesting. It's not necessarily, for us, but I'm just saying it's very interesting. Some of those kids bring great stuff.
Just made me laugh.
The only other thing,
Two, are you saying if they're a 9th or 10th grader, they just serve a 2-year term?
Ron's making me laugh.
And the more senior of the group would be on the diocese or whatever?
that would be a little confusing at times, I
Let's
suppose.
talk about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, let's
that
do
we
this.
could-
Let's put this on the agenda.
And the only other thing I want to put on there, and there's nothing written about this too much, but I would like to somehow attract a wider array of students. And I know I've talked about this before. And I don't know, I don't want them to not be, great students, but we have great students in a wide variety of schools, and not everybody is in a leadership class that is a great fit for this job. And so I don't know how necessarily to phrase that, but I just know there are a lot of kids out there that would do a great job, but maybe are not class president, ASB president, leadership president, etc. So
Diane, we had a great candidate for Legacy one year, a very good candidate for Legacy. And it was a hard debate whether to, and
Yeah.
we didn't select the last two. But that candidate was very good. Nothing excluded that person from applying, and he applied and came very close to being the student.
yeah, I just think we need to let students know that
Yeah,
too. I
yeah.
think a lot of kids
Advertise
would
it.
never think of themselves as being in the running for something like that.
So maybe that's something we can put in and ensure that it's advertised at all schools, all the.
And that all students can apply, you
Yeah.
know.
Not that we're not doing that. Perfect.
Okay.
All right, last on our
Oh,
list here.
So the last item is communication protocols, and it's an opportunity for the board to talk about any communication protocols that might not be working for the group, or, us to just reflect on how those are going. So it's, just open dialogue.
So I actually asked to put this on, and the big issue is that we need to remember that when we're visiting schools, we have to give the superintendent lead time and the courtesy of knowing that we're going to these schools. We are elected officials, but we are not employees, and we absolutely have to, out of courtesy, make sure that we let the superintendent know when we're visiting schools. It's the right thing to do. Let me phrase it to you a different way. I have people on the board of my company, but they don't have free reign. They can't walk into my facilities. They can't do anything without discussing it with our CEO or COO, one of the owners. It's not a first come, just walk in the door. They're there as an advisory. They're there to lead, to give direction, but we absolutely cannot assume that we are employees of the district.
So Mike, can I clarify, you said without letting the superintendent know?
Correct.
So, okay, and the principal, because I had always asked permission of the principal. I've not ever thought to send you a message. I'm
Well,
sorry.
here's how our protocol, and so it's a good opportunity for us to just make sure we're all on the same page. And so my understanding of our protocol that we've talked about is that how it works, if a board member wants to visit a school, you just need to let me know. And then I let the principal know and ensure that the time is mutually agreeable and that kind of a thing. And please understand, it's great that you all want to visit schools. We want you to visit schools. That's awesome. It's just a matter of ensuring that the school knows you're coming, that I know you're coming, that if you've got a concern about something and want to see something, or you're excited about something and you want to see something, that I'm in the loop of that, because that's my job as superintendent. And so how it works is board member lets me know I'd like to visit this school or these schools and these dates work for me. And then I reach out to the principals and say, would this work for you? And sometimes they have meetings or they're out of the building or whatever on that day. So then we figure it out and then I get back to you and say, yep, that works. And then you go visit the schools. And principals love to have you as well. The principals know this is the protocol too. So if you reach out to them directly and I'm not in the loop, they're going to contact me and say, hey, Diane contacted me and wants to visit. And so we just want to make sure we're all on the same page about how it works and why.
What if we get invited to something?
Yeah, so it's different, there's kind of different hats, right, that board members wear, and some of you are parents and some of you have spouses who work in the district. And so that's different. Like if you're visiting your school with your parent hat on or volunteering or something.
I was thinking about like
Yeah.
the Amazing Shake or something.
Yeah,
Do you still want to?
I think if it's like, I know that we were all invited. I don't think we were all in the same email, but to go read during Read Across America. I know at least maybe 3 of you are going, and just because the person who invited me let me know that. I think it's different if somebody's inviting you to attend a event or whatever, but if you're wanting to initiate a visit to a school, that's really what I'm talking about. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so going to visit a school, go to a classroom, whichever, reach out. Invited to something, open houses, carnivals, all that stuff.
Oh, yes, of course.
Show up.
Yeah.
Because that's at the principal or the staff
Like
members.
and anybody could go to those things. And I think the other thing we just have to be mindful of, and I know that oftentimes in your role, you don't maybe see yourselves this way, but what we don't want is to create an atmosphere of fear at all, that people are feeling like they're, being inspected or something. And it would also potentially cause issues with our, collective bargaining agreement. And I know that's never, and there's nothing anybody's wanting to hide or anything like that. It's just like courtesy. I mean, just like you wouldn't want somebody to show up to your office, right? Like unannounced and unexpected. And, it's just that kind of courtesy and open communication protocols that we're all seeking. And so I think for the most part, it's working really well. And it's just making sure, it's not, if you're going to athletic events or, open houses and things like that, that's not what we're talking about.
Also with communications, if we're done with that subject.
Yeah, I think so.
So I know that we had the policy where Mike was going to respond to all the emails, and I think that the spirit of that was that the community would feel heard and felt like when they sent something that we're on the other side and we're listening and we've got it and stuff. And I've heard a lot of feedback that they don't feel that. They don't feel like, so I was wondering if we can have a discussion about how we can, when somebody sends us an email, it's a hard thing to ask Mike to give a heartfelt response on behalf of the board to every email, and that's a tough ask. But then at the same time, I think people want a little bit more, and so I don't know really what the answer is, but that's some feedback that I definitely heard.
When I respond, the key, and the only reason I keep my responses very simple is because we have 5 separate voices. So when in fact, Tracy responded one for me today, and I'm glad she did. So I wrote it 3 times. I'm like, no, that's not right. That's not the right. It's what I was thinking, what the board position is. I couldn't mesh it up. The whole point is, when I responded saying, thank you very much, we've received your information, we appreciate your feedback. This states we saw it, we've read it, we've received it, we've taken the information. If there's a very specific ask in there, I will usually refer it to Dr. Pierce, or Dr. Pierce will then respond to someone else. Most of the time, my feeling when I read this is people want to be heard. They want to, and I'm responding saying, we as a board have received your information, and we've listened. So again, if there's an ask, I always push it off to Dr. Pierce to make sure that it goes down the road. if people, because the problem is, I can't speak for all 5 of us. That's not the point, because again, I can say something, you know, Diane may agree, it might piss you off. I mean, it's just, I can't do that, and that's, I don't believe is the position. I'm saying, we see it, we've received it, the board has, as a board, has collectively received your information. Again, if people want to have that more in-depth conversation, they need to come have it one-on-one, or they need to come make a presentation to the board, or come speak, or do something, where if there is an ask. But again, I don't know what else to do.
One thing I saw another district do, and I can't, maybe Spokane area, is they asked someone, I don't remember who was on the board, but someone on the board during their little, each board member has some time, they actually acknowledged, thank you, community, we had 8 emails this week and they were all in support of this or support of that, and just kind of shared like, this is what we got this week from an email sort of community note standpoint. Just
When I
letting
first
the community
moved to
know, but,
Kennewick years ago and started attending meetings, there was something similar. It was before you were online, but there was something similar. And I don't remember who did it, but it was like, received an email about too many lights at the parking lot or whatever, and it just listed those things. I think it was almost under consent agenda. I don't remember, it's 10 years ago, but that's a thought.
Someone's also like, so.
It sounds like the police blotter.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it didn't talk about complaints.
Yes, sir.
During my early tenure as a school board member, I would attempt to answer mail that was sent to me. And on 2 occasions, it was publicized that Ron Mabry of the Kennewick School Board, said something, but they responded as if the whole school board said it.
That's right.
The school board said this, and it was only me that said it. So I appreciate that voice coming from one person, and that's the president. And so that when you speak, you're speaking for the board. I don't want to speak for the board unless I'm acting as the president. And I would like your input to keep me within the bounds of what we as a group has agreed upon. So I appreciate it, and I appreciate the people, if they feel strongly about it, coming and speaking it to us at the meeting. I don't want to bring out all the emails at a meeting that's been done in the past, because sometimes people don't want everything put out. They send you an email because they want it between you and them. Right.
You
They
wouldn't
don't want
name
it.
names.
They don't want it out in the public. They're talking to you or just me. And they can talk to you or just me, but remember your reply, you are a school board member, and that's how it's going to be seen.
And and really, Micah, that's why I'm so short with my replies, because again, I really, my understanding of what the board's desire was when we started doing this is that people want to know that the board has seen their email and they just want a response. And so
And to be clear, I'm not criticizing you. I
No,
actually,
I
think you're
get
doing
it.
exactly what we talked about.
Yeah.
And so I think I've had no issue with that. I'm now you're just communications going forward, and I just brought that up as a discussion point of like, hey, I have heard that people just feel like there's you know, I had some the other day, like, I know I said it, I got the response back with the same response I got last time. I feel like you guys aren't even listening, and I don't even want to send it anymore.
totally hear
Like,
them.
yeah,
Read every single one of them, go through them, do the whole deal. I know I am.
And we do,
So-
we do take action on some things. There've been, not some things, we take action, but people will say a certain thing and that becomes, they may not understand, but it becomes an action item a couple of months later after a discussion, right? So it might not be immediate, but action is taken.
If there is a specific ask in the email that people are looking for an actionable item, great. A lot of the times people are stating their positions, stating their beliefs, saying, hey, you know, got you, heard you. Thank you very much. But again, they say, look, hey, my child's having a problem here, this teacher's that. That immediately gets funneled right to, you know, superintendent, and down the road we go.
So I'm going to ask this. I'll be the whatever. What do we do, or what is the advice on emails that come in? They obviously are not favorable emails towards a certain or any school board member. They're filled with misinformation or half-truths and maybe 3, 4 of the board members have no clue what's going on, so all they're getting is that email, and it's directed towards that one board member. Is there a need to clarify to others that this is not the whole truth, or are we just let it be and you continue with the response like, thank you, move on? I guess that's what I'm asking, because it gets to a point where, and I know you guys have had this too, but when you keep getting these constant emails from constant community members with all this stuff in here that's not accurate, and you can go back and watch board meetings, thankfully they're recorded and there's the truth, but these constantly come up, and I know maybe Ron has no clue what's happened, or you don't, or you don't. But now I want to shed some light to like let the board know, like, no, this isn't actually, here's some more information, right? So what do we do in that regard? Because either A, we just keep ignoring it and let the mail come in and let you respond to it, or B, does anybody even care to get the other side, I guess is what I'm getting at.
And I thought, I mean, I read your emails the other day, and I get it, and I appreciate it. I think at the same time, you know, people have First Amendment rights. They can say what they want to say. People are spreading half-truths. You can't turn your head or pick up your phone without reading something that's tilted one way or the other. And also, I think the difficult part why a lot of people don't want to be in any public service is just that very reason. They don't want the scrutiny.
Yeah.
Because, and with this position comes scrutiny, and becomes vitriol and hate and a lot of discontent. We've all got it, whether in person, whether online, whether in emails, phone calls, whatever it is. Trust me, I'm up to my eyeballs in politics right now.
I'm just saying, if you guys don't have the other information, to me, that's frustrating where someone is saying all this and giving these half truths and maybe saying, oh, so-and-so did this, this, and this, but now I want to be like, hey, like, Ron, this didn't happen. Like,
and
this is, like,
I think, and Ron, I'll get you, but I think the important thing is I would hope you trust your other board members to understand that, you know, we also see that things are tilted. We understand that there's always another side. And that's one of the things I teach my children every day. If you're going to go make a statement, you better understand the other side, and you better be able to back up and get to the middle. Because understanding what one person said, one person said, they're probably both wrong.
Yeah.
The truth is somewhere here. It's in the middle. And yes, please.
I think your point is legit. I think if it's strong enough and you feel strong enough about it and you want the board to know the other side, either say you want an agenda item where you can do some clarification, or if it's something private, we can have an executive session and discuss it. So we have avenues where we want to clear or make sure that everybody knows the story. Those are two proposals that I have.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And has been done in the past.
The only wonder I have is on the exec session. I don't know if that fits under the RCW about allowable executive session.
Isn't it personnel?
I wouldn't even mind sharing, like, in my board report.
That's what I was, or I was wondering if, you know, I know you can't have a meeting over email, you can't reply to one another, but in that case, I believe, and I can verify this with Bronson, that an individual board member could email a one-way communication to the rest of the board to say, I want to provide you with some information about this, blah, blah, blah. And as long as there's not responses back and a dialogue going, then it's not a meeting.
Or could we send that to you and you send it to the board? And that eliminates, because that's the thing. I just want to make sure that when these nasty emails come in that are half truths and, you know, name calling and all this stuff on these situations, I want to be able to provide context and a little bit of defense to the board and give the full story rather than keep getting these emails that, you know, have all these whatever in them. So that might be the avenue to you, to the board, that's fine. I just want to make sure that you guys get all the information, because it gets tiring when they're
There you go.
coming in like they're from a AK-47.
All right. We all good? Move on. We still got to go to executive session.
Yes,
All right.
Turning out the lights, we have to.
Yeah, exactly. So next meeting agenda, we got board compensation, nutritional services, staff safety, got policy 2333 for second reading. Do you guys want to put the,
Student advisory
that one?
policy.
Yeah,
Yep.
the,
We'll add that and the curriculum cycle too, and I'll make sure there was
Curriculum
nothing
cycle,
else that would be added, but yeah.
That was something, oh, sorry, guys.
Sorry, real quick, what's staff safety?
That's what I was gonna ask. What does that entail, staff safety?
That's our annual report. It's one of our annual goal reports on staff safety, the training requirements and accidents and those kinds of things.
I just wonder what
Wasn't sure if it
that
was a
was.
policy or something. Yeah, whatever.
okay, so it says we're supposed to go into executive session for 60 minutes. It's not going to be 60 minutes.
Okay.
We're not
do
having
the
it for 60 minutes,
performance
just so we're all square.
Don't hit the gravel yet, just, hey, I sent you an email about a possible topic, after hours bus drivers. And can that be on our next, something to discuss?
Sure. I did reply to your email and provide you with some information. I don't know if you had a chance to see it because it was late this afternoon. And then I can also just include that information in weekly update.
Okay.
And then if from there we want to put it on the agenda, you just let me know.
Okay. Perfect.
All right, thank you so much.
To the other room.
To the other room.
To the back room.
We'll be in 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
The our usual room with the chips.
I hope the chips are